What's good, y'all? Dr. T. Hasan Johnson here. Hoping everybody's well. This is Wednesday the 23rd. All right. Hope everybody is floating in well. We doing all right over here. Just taking it day by day. You know what I mean? I see Officer Faulkner here. What's going on? Mogul. What's up? Malika, peace to you. Urban, what's going on? Julius. Liang, Ian, what's good, man? Just getting started. It's been a very interesting week. Soul Shader, what's up? Trying to get the last of my grading in. Hopefully I can finish by tomorrow. So it's I'm on that grind, trying to get it done. Got a couple of lectures I need to put up into the Institute, so we're moving. You know, things are going. Can't complain. Right? Ace, Shadow Dog, Unsunken, what's up? I've been pulling all-nighters the last few nights, just, you know, grading, getting it in. And then my son messed around and asked me if we could watch The Mandalorian, if we could binge watch it. Yo. You ain't said nothing, you know? So, I was up doing that, which works for me, because if I'm grading, I just need, you know, a little bit of something going on to keep me awake, keep me going, especially when I'm trying to power through. So, we finished season 1. We gotta do season 2, so it's all good. Queen Kalila, what's up? Lee's Ways, what's going on? Roger. Damon, what's going on? Taylor. See people coming through. We're broadcasting tonight on YouTube and Facebook. All right. So just getting it going. Kevin, what's up? Yeah, it is the way. Michael, what's happening? All right. Well, as usual, welcome to the Onyx Report, where we uplift black men and boys using critical analysis. All right. Tonight will be no different. Y'all know the deal. We're going to delve into a couple of different things. So we'll be looking at, you know, John Henry or John Henry Ism, as well as Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So we're going to talk about a couple things, but y'all know how I like to do. Before we go there, got a few things to get out the way. First of which, I want to thank my most consistent supporters, those who have joined the channel on YouTube or Patreon. All right. Like to shout them out. As usual, they're holding the brother down. So out of honor to them, here is my genuine thanks. All right, that's right. Shout out to the supporters. As I said, they've been holding me down. I really appreciate y'all. If you're interested in becoming a supporter, very easy to do. You can go ahead and look right below the screen if you're on YouTube, and right next to the subscribe button. And by the way, if you haven't, hit that and hit the bell so you can be alerted to when my videos kick in. You can go ahead and subscribe by hitting the subscribe button, joining the channel. And there are levels of support you can engage in, from gold level at the bottom all the way up to black opal level. And with them come different sets of perks, so you can check that out yourself. You can also become a member on Patreon in 2 separate ways. You go on my Patreon page and you can just look up Dr. T. Hasan Johnson. And from there, you can become a film review supporter. I put up film reviews and I'll be doing a few of them this week, as a matter of fact. And those are private just for the Patreon group, or you can become a supporter of the Institute for Black Male Studies, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. but you can become a member or supporter of the Institute that way through as well. Excuse me, that way too, I should say, on Patreon. So consider joining, becoming a member. All right. All right. Let's get into a few things. Y'all know I like to kind of start with Sacred Black Masculine series, right? This is the series that I started with a few months ago to honor Black men, because we do that over here. We honor and celebrate Black men, Black male achievements, Black male support. We do that over here because that's what we're about, right? So, and really trying to promote brotherhood in many ways. And you'll notice that even on the merchandise that I do, you'll notice, or sometimes even the publications that I put out in honor of some of the things we've done as a group, like the Black male political agenda. You'll notice it said it's authored by the Brotherhood of the Onyx Report. So brotherhood is definitely something we support over here. And so, yes, send me examples of the Sacred Black Masculine. These are acts of, support, acts of love extended by Black men or boys, for that matter, Black males of any age. Especially those acts that highlight the humanity of Black men, which, says something. If you haven't checked out my brother, Dr. Ronald Neal, he did a video very recently dealing with Black male humanity. And that is precisely what we support and affirm over this way. So dealing with the Sacred Black Masculine, I every week, just kind of organically show you a couple of pieces or examples of which as they come. And feel free to send them to me. You can send them on Twitter. I'm at Lord Hasan, or you can send them on Facebook, or you can email them. You can go to my main website, drthassanjohnson.com, and you can email me through there. Any examples you have, right? And so we just got a couple we want to look out for today as we kind of move in, right? These brothers here, right? 3 Black fathers launch Roku channel with 13 shows to address the lack of diversity in news programming, right? This is, let me see. This is an article you can find on blacknews.com, right? And basically says 3 years ago, these 3 Black fathers, Marquise Lupton, William Way Jr., and Brandon Way Sr., decided to do something about the lack of diversity in their regional news stations. Building off of Marquise's Marquise's, I may have pronounced that wrong, decade-long journalism career, the 3 fathers decided to launch the Cultured Professional, best known as the TCP Network. All 3 of these Lancaster native fathers noticed not only a void in diversity with their local news, but also noticed a trend of negativity when it came to covering people of color, especially men. Inspired by media moguls such as Tyler Perry, Byron Allen, Marquise, William, and Brandon, wanted to bring a fresh voice, fresh perspective, and the diversity to their regional news scene. January 2021, 3 founders will be taking their business up another notch and will be airing their content on Roku TV, Tilted TCP TV. These Black fathers, I don't know what that meant, tilted. All right, these Black fathers hope the content they were able to build and broadcast were past 3 years, these past 3 years, I'm tripping, and reach a larger audience. We feel as though it's important to tell our own stories, deliver our own news in our vernacular, Lupton says. So many times as a news reporter, I would be pulled off an amazing story only to cover another shooting, another fight, or another fire. It gets exhausting covering your people in a negative light constantly. So TCP Network aims to give people of color and other disenfranchised groups a voice and platform, and supports its community through broadcasting content, community service events, and media literacy camps for kids. All right, so shout out to these 3 brothers for doing so. They are definitely examples of the Sacred Black Masculine. All right. Second up in the Sacred Black Masculine series for the week, California inmates raise over $30,000 for a student in need after meeting through a book club. California's Soledad State Prison and an elite private school, Palma School, have joined forces through their love for reading. According to CNN, the prep schools for boys in Salina, California, or that should be Salinas, so it says Salina, created a partnership with the correctional training facility at the prison, which includes a reading group for both the high school students and inmates. This has allowed the 2 groups to merge, not only to share their love for reading, but to develop and learn a greater understanding of each other. Now, the reading group has soared to new heights after a Palma student was unable to pay the $1,200 monthly tuition, and having not one but two parents suffering a medical emergency. The inmates stepped up to help. It says, I didn't believe it at first, shared Jim Micheletti, the English and theology teacher behind the reading program. They said, we value you guys coming in. We'd like to do something for your school. Can you find us a student on campus who needs some money to attend Palma? Known as the Brothers in Blue, through the program, the inmates have raised over $30,000 right from inside the prison to create a scholarship for student Sion Green. Not only did the gift help him graduate this year, but also attend college at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. Shout out to you brothers, Soledad, and the Brothers in Blue, that is, for supporting this young cat going to school, right? Urban Warlock, appreciate that support. Please support the channel. Like, share, and subscribe. Y'all know the deal. And you can contribute in a wide variety of forms. Always, my keyboard swivels around back here. All right. So you can support the show on Cash App, on PayPal, in a number of different ways. Please do so. Put some information in the chat if you need it. So appreciate that. Okay. So yes, definitely shout out to those brothers of Soledad. It's the kind of support we're talking about. And this is not something that black men, avoid doing. This is something black men do all the time without the fanfare. And so I like to shout it out when I see it. Right. All right. Next up, this is a little different one. This is a film that came out some time ago. Right. Diary of a Tired Black Man. And this is a film done by filmmaker Tim Alexander. And I want to say this was 2009, I believe. It's an older piece. You can find it on YouTube. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, it started on YouTube as a short video that had to do with a father coming to pick up his daughter from his ex-wife's house. And she is there with her friends. That is her. In the film, you could see her, pictured there on the screen. And, she and her friends were frustrated when he shows up with, I guess it was a white woman in his car. Apparently it wasn't a woman he was seeing, it was just a friend. But she and her friends decided to ride him down. And from there, he responded. Now, that particular response, if I understand the story correctly, spawned such a generous response on YouTube that it ended up becoming a film. And the film is done in a way I'd actually never seen before. It is a theatrical piece, independently financed. I want to say Alexander did all of this himself, but throughout the film, he stops and shows pieces of the film to people on the street or in various, locations, and then asks their thoughts and opinions. So you get this interesting film and reaction to the film at the same time. Now, the thing that's most interesting about this film, and there was supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of sequels, but it didn't happen. And my understanding of why it didn't happen is because Alexander didn't really, get as much support as he probably should have. Shout out to Chief Rocker. Appreciate that support. MLR, thank you for that generous support. Appreciate that. Deacon Dave, appreciate that. He didn't get as much support as he anticipated, and he said the times have changed. I saw him make a comment about a week ago when asked about why the sequel didn't come out. And mind you, if you haven't seen the film, for black men, if you've had some experience as a black man in this country, trust me, you will identify with different aspects of this film. So I highly suggest that you check it out. And you can see it on YouTube, right? The whole film. So the original video and the film itself is both available there. But, he kind of felt like things kind of moved on and that there wasn't really a place for the film. And I think he's mistaken, and I told him so. I said, the thing is, you were just ahead of your time. This is very proto red pill. This happened before a lot of formal discussion would take place. So he did not have the wind at his back. He wasn't able to ride a wave of support because really that had not generated yet. So this is a red pill film that was made before red pill. And so there are some elements of it that'll likely be a little different than what, what has evolved and developed since then, but it's definitely worth a look and worth support. Professor Conroe, good to see you in here. Gavin, what's going on? Good to see you. All right. So, Art New Style, what's happening? So, yeah. Oh, good looking out, Roger. Good to see you. So support the film and support the brother. And it's my hopes that we can talk him into completing the sequel, because he did a trailer for the sequel that was really powerful. In the first film, it's his daughter is very young, and he's kind of dealing with his, you see him flashbacks. He's still married. He's seeing his wife treating him with the utmost disrespect, and then of course seeing his young daughter start to take on her behavior patterns. And in the the trailer for the sequel, his daughter, I want to say, is high school, college age, and you get to see the fallout of kind of being raised in a misandrist environment, where the hatred for not only black men but the father in particular is quite intense. So even though this is a little random, I think it's past due that we revisit this piece and really talk about it, because I think there's some elements in it that are extremely powerful and really never got its due in the way it should have. So shout out to Tim Alexander and this piece, Diary of a Tired Black Man. I've shown it plenty of times. I've had many a student go home and buy it and talk about how impactful it was. Short story, I showed this in a class once, and one of the class members, young lady, said, well, this is ridiculous. This is highly exaggerated. She said, I don't know anybody who acts like this, let alone any black women. And slowly in the back of the room, one guy kind of timidly raised his hand, and he said, this is how my mother acts. And then another guy raised his hand. He said, yeah, that's how my sister acts. Another one said, yeah, that's my cousin. Another one said, that's my lady. And then they began to talk, and that's when I knew something had broken through, because prior to that, it was hard to try and get a conversation generated amongst black men in a classroom setting. They were so used to being criticized, critiqued, and being considered the problem that they hadn't developed a vocabulary for how to articulate their issues. So when I showed this film, it gave them license to talk about their experiences in a way that they had not previously been allowed to. Right? And so this piece is extremely powerful for that, if not that alone. Right? So let's definitely support that. Artisan, what's going on? Make sure you check your email and go from there. All right. So moving on, we're going to acknowledge some quick shout outs. And there might be a line blurred between shout outs and sacred masculine, especially with our first one. But I definitely had to shout it out one way or the other. 12-year-old genius on soaring through college. He says, I just grasp information quickly. Caleb knew sign language by 9 months old. At age 1, he was reading. At age 2, he knew how to do fractions. Caleb said, I have this distinct memory of going to the first grade and learning there, and everyone was way taller than me because, I was 2. I could barely walk. Middle school was awful. The kids there, they kind of looked down on me. They treated me like I was an anomaly, and I kind of am. He's been studying aerospace engineering for a year at Chattahoochee Technical College in Marietta, Georgia. If he stayed there, he'd be on track to graduate in 2 years if he stays. But his parents want a university that's the right fit for the tween genius. His mother says, we want him to be in an environment where he's accepted and not tolerated. Now, pause. That's huge. I can say that I don't think I've ever found an environment where I was accepted and not tolerated. I really can't say that. I don't mean to be, it's not hyperbole for me to say I really felt that my entire life. I felt tolerated wherever I was. I felt tolerated even in relationships with people. So I could definitely identify with a desire of a parent to take your child, even if your child isn't a cutting edge genius. I think many black parents still feel the need to find some kind of place where their child doesn't have to feel tolerated. I mean, that is actually the perfect word for what I know I've experienced, and working with parents and students from elementary school through college age, I can identify with that feeling of being tolerated. So I'm glad that his parents pointed out that they're really trying to make sure that he focuses on that, right? His mother goes on to say that they add to their hopes for Caleb, go far beyond grades to make sure that when he is an adult, he'll make a great husband, a great father, and a great friend one day. And shout out to my boy Adam Ibmore. He had a reaction to that last statement. And he observed that, it's interesting that his mother's primary goal for her son is that he make a great husband and father. Again, that he serve as a utility for others and not really focus on his own happiness, or at least have a focus on his own well-being, beyond his service to others. So yes, there's an acknowledgement not to put him in a place where he's tolerated, but she's talking about her future hopes for him when he becomes an adult. And Adam just kind of observed the way that was articulated, strictly about his utility to others. And this is how many of us have been socialized. And we're going to go into this in more depth later tonight when we really look at John Henry Ism and how it kind of manifests. But the central idea here is the way we're socialized in many ways is about what service and utility we provide for others. Not necessarily in and of itself doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it can be an inhumane thing if pushed to too great an extreme, right? Let's see, we got a few people in the chat. Black Urus, good to see you. That High Scholar, AB Media, what's up? Good to see you guys in here. Yeah, Black Uru says, I would alter it to embraced, not tolerated. Young man of his particular talent should be welcomed, beloved, and celebrated. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. But she was actually trying to find a place where he would be accepted and not tolerated. And too much of the time, I find black kids to be tolerated, and it doesn't end in childhood in many ways, especially for black males. So definitely something that we need to have a concerted effort to challenge, especially as black men and particularly as fathers. I have a son, as many of you know, and I go to great lengths to try and make sure that he's not just tolerated, or exoticized, in a variety of ways, not only because he's black and male, 6'7" and all of that jazz. People can't wait to, do all kinds of things with him in their own imagination. And I have to make sure that to the best of my ability that doesn't happen. Now, these next two, I didn't have a lot of information on, and there didn't seem to be a lot of information available, but I thought them worthy of acknowledgement, even though I'm not familiar with one and am familiar with the other. So this is Burt Belasco of Let's Stay Together, and the Mick star apparently died at 38 in his hotel room. They found him in bed, and apparently there was blood in the bed, but they didn't say much else. I don't know if that blood came from, from within him in terms of some kind of ailment, or if he had been injured. So there's still more information to come. I literally saw these reports a few minutes before I went on, and I kind of pushed them in here because I wanted to at least put them out there. So if anybody has any additional information, please make sure you share it. But to my knowledge, this young man here has passed away, and we don't fully know why, right? I am a bit more familiar with the second one, though, and this one really caught me off guard, right? Houdini rapper John Ecstasy Fletcher dead at 56, and this one was kind of a trip, having grown up off Houdini. I always saw him. He always wore his signature style hat. I remembered his voice, but was shocked to find that he had passed away at 56. Again, details are still slow coming, so we're waiting to find out what happened. But soldiers are going down. You know what I mean? This last year has been, 2020 has been ridiculous. It's been absolutely ridiculous, man. So again, I'm not sure what he passed of, what happened. But as I said, information should be forthcoming soon. Hopefully we'll find something out. But people are going down left and right, and it's truly sad. So peace to both of these brothers and their families. but I can say, you know, this one hit my heart in a different way, you know, just from growing up and hearing his voice, you know, feeling like I had some kind of connection, even though I never met the man. But, you know, he played a role in my development, just, you know, listening to him, you know. So shout out to Houdini, shout out to John Fletcher. Peace to you, sir. You know, rest in power. So yeah, wanted to share a little bit of that with y'all. We're gonna move ahead and move into our current events, right? Yeah, Prada, it's unfortunately becoming pretty normal, and that's a sad and strange thing to say. And James, absolutely, 56 is young, but with black men, you know, hell, I didn't think I was gonna make it past 21. I was rather surprised, to be honest with you. So 56, wow. Anyway, yeah, Henry, another legend gone. All right, so we are going to delve into our current events. Let's get some of these in. Okay. First up, people are more accepting of research that uncovers sex differences that favor women. All right, this article here on scipost.org really kind of highlights the legacy of feminism in the popular imagination and in pop culture, really. It says most people assume that men and women are more accepting of sex differences that favor their own sex, but according to new research, both men and women tend to react less positively to scientific findings that show men outperforming women. The new study appears in the British Journal of Psychology. It's entitled Reactions to Male Favoring versus Female Favoring Sex Differences, a pre-registered experiment in Southeast Asian replication. It was authored by Steve Stewart Williams, Chim Yi Marybeth Chang, Zhu Ling Wong, Jesse D. Blackburn, and Andrew G. Thomas. In the study, 492 participants, most of whom resided in the US, the United Kingdom, or Canada, were asked to carefully read a fake popular science article that reported on a sex difference in either drawing ability or lying frequency. Oh, that's interesting. One version of each article claimed that men had outperformed women, while another version claimed that women had outperformed men. After reading the article, the participants completed a questionnaire to gauge their attitudes about the findings. They also indicated how they thought the average man and woman would respond to the scientific research. Stuart Williams and his colleagues found that both sexes reacted less positively when the article reported on male favoring differences compared to when it reported on female favoring differences. The paper has two main takeaways, they say. The first is that, as we suspected, people react less positively to sex differences that favor males than to those that favor females. For example, people view hypothetical research claiming that men draw better or lie less than women as more offensive, harmful, and upsetting than hypothetical research making the equal but opposite claim. They also view the male favoring claims as less important and less plausible. The second takeaway is that people are very bad at predicting how the average man and woman will react to such research. Specifically, they predict that both sexes will strongly prefer differences that favor their own sex, when in fact women only moderately favor or moderately prefer own sex favoring differences, and men moderately prefer differences favoring women. We did find tentative evidence, though, that people react less positively to research led by a male. Right? If the research finds a male favoring difference in a highly valued trait. So male favoring research is bad at the best of times, but it may be even worse when it comes from a male researcher. Pause. Right? This is part of what Black male studies is really responding to. It's not just the dearth of information about Black males that isn't biased by stereotype, but it's also the response to Black males writing on themselves, right? Teaching on themselves, right? I've taught classes where I've had students try and get me fired for showing data on Black males. That's it. Levels of homelessness, cancer rates, HIV rates, incarceration rates, carceral treatment. That's it. One class, I just showed data on the screen. Tried to get me fired, right? So a lot of what this report is talking about is very true. The perception of Black males and males in general right? And the attitudes about information that, and understand, when I say favors males, it doesn't even have to be something that says men are better at something. It can be something that says that men are worse, or men deal with something to a greater degree. Some type of experience that is undue, is unjust, whether it be oppressive or just being something that damages them to a greater degree. There's actually a theory. It's called intersectional invisibility, that makes the argument that black men, for example, if they're more prioritized in terms of their heightened numbers at death, especially if you're talking about police homicide or something of that nature, it's considered a problematic act to focus on them. So even when they experience something to a greater degree than other groups that's negative for them, it's considered a privilege on one hand, and it is considered also sexist in and of itself. So, the legacy of a very particular brand of feminism, right? A very particular brand of what Dr. Tommy Curry referred to as dominance feminism at one point, is at play, where the kind of blowback against men even being in a position to where they're talking about themselves is viewed negatively. And this, of course, is just a hypothetical study that illustrated those attitudes being prevalent, but it's still nonetheless very impactful. And I say in the black community, there's another twist to it that's a little more intense than in others, because the disdain for black men, can be way more extreme than we're familiar with in many instances. You take a poor community and you divide that community by providing one group resources and another group prison, it exacerbates many of these tensions already and pushes them into a whole nother zone, right? So they say, and it's another question we're investigating, is why people react less positively to male than female favoring sex differences. Our most recent studies suggest that it's almost entirely because male favoring sex differences are seen as more harmful to women than female favoring differences are to men. We've also found that people's perceptions of the harmfulness of the research help shape their perceptions of its quality, almost as if people are thinking the findings are harmful, therefore the study was poorly done. So there's an assumption, and again, this ties in to research by men doing research on men, the attitude even from other men in the academy and outside of the academy can tend to be that there's something flawed about it in and of itself, or your motives for doing it are flawed or problematic. So if you're critical, so we're not even talking about being critical of, say, feminism or representations of women, because y'all know me, and we're gonna talk about it tonight. But I tend to see example after example of not just misandrous media, but actually, female superiority gestures, female superiority narratives that go way beyond just being misandrous and highlight the superiority of females across age. And I look at the impacts this has, especially on a new generation, because my generation, we grew up where, say, with the toys and cartoons, they were starting to separate the boys and girls and highlight, both groups. So a rough example would be, as a kid, you could watch He-Man and She-Ra. You could watch G.I. Joe and Jim and the Holograms. They had, they both had television time. They both had shows about them, so on and so forth. But something distinct began to happen where you had this tension between the two, this competition, and female characters began to be measured by how well they can dominate or outsmart male characters. Now, if this was a sporadic thing, I would be indifferent. But I told you guys, and I've said this many times, when my son at 12 years old could tell me that he'd never seen an example of a boy being better at anything in media, that's when it really hit me how problematic this constant kind of framework is. So this article is showing us how it's not limited to media entertainment and can be found in the academy, can be found in just magazines and online articles. As long as they point to a difference between the sexes, it is considered a problem when the men are actually better at something or worse off at experiencing something. And it's considered an inherent good when the women are better at it, right? And this goes back to these Victorian ideas about female purity and goodness and inherent male negativity. It's just on steroids. So anyway, check that out if you're interested. Sidepost.org. People are more accepting of research that uncovers sex differences that favor women. This is probably another reason why I do these kind of reports where I highlight when women in particular do something that goes against type, or at least type as we imagine it, because they're human beings. So, you know, the type is really no different in terms of the capacity for evil, but we tend to act like they don't exist. But I also do it when you find black males as, you know, the subject of, or being on the receiving end of negativity. So this one here is from dailymail.co.uk. Last person to see Kwawan Charles alive has drug arrest history. Right? Let's see here. Get it where I put it. It says, okay, the white woman who authorities believe was the last person who saw black teenager Kwawan Charles alive before his corpse was found in a Louisiana sugarcane field 4 days later has an extensive arrest record that includes drug-related charges as well as burglary and receiving stolen property. What's more, the woman, Janet Irvin, 37, temporarily lost custody of her two of her three children, a decade ago after she was accused of domestic violence and neglect by her children's father, according to court records in Lafayette, Louisiana. We're going to skip that part. So anyway, it says here, there's some bullet point information here. Kwawan was 15, was found dead on November 3rd in a field in Louisiana, 25 miles north of his family's home in Baldwin. He was reported missing 4 days earlier on October 30th by his father. He had been picked up from his home by Janet Irving and her son Gavin. Kwawan was friends with Gavin, who's 17, but his parents said they had never met him. So Kwawan's parents had never met Gavin. Irwin, 37, has an extensive arrest record. As I said before, she temporarily lost custody of two of her three children. No one has been arrested, and police have not named anyone as suspects as of this article. They say Kwawan died by drowning in ankle-deep water in a field. However, his face was so mutilated, his lips were partially gone when he was found in the sugarcane field. He also had multiple lacerations on his face, which his family say are suspicious. Police said over the weekend that the lacerations were from aquatic activity. What in the fuck? Appreciate that support, Officer Faulkner. Yeah, that Otto, appreciate the support. Yeah, that's powerful. So still waiting for information as to what happened, but apparently this woman might be the last person to have seen him alive. He met Gavin, her son, when he moved to a new school. And I believe the population of black students was much lower there. He was one of few and just came up missing. Yeah. Well, peace to him and his family. I hope we can find out some additional information soon. But again, if this is something you know anything about, please look into this article and see if you can provide some information to help identify his killers. Okay. Next up, the Justice Department sues Walmart, right, alleging it helped fuel the opioid crisis. The agency has accused the retailer of filling thousands of problematic prescriptions and is seeking penalties that could add up to billions of dollars. The Justice Department is suing Walmart, alleging that the nation's largest retailer knowingly filled thousands of problematic prescriptions that helped fuel the opioid crisis. A lawsuit filed Tuesday in the U.S. District Court in Delaware contends that Walmart failed to properly screen prescriptions and prioritize speed and profit over patient well-being at its 5,000 pharmacies. The government is seeking civil penalties that could total billions of dollars. According to the news release, Walmart called the investigation tainted and said in a statement that the Justice Department should focus on bad doctors who write prescriptions instead of blaming the pharmacists that fill them. Last month, Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, pleaded guilty to 3 felonies and agreed to an $8.3 billion settlement with the Justice Department for its role in a crisis that has killed more than 400,000 Americans in the past 2 decades. Roughly 50,000 Americans died of opioid overdoses last year, a record federal data shows, and medical experts have warned that the coronavirus pandemic and economic crisis have led to new surges in opioid deaths. Walmart ordered 5.5 billion oxycodone or hydrocodone pills from 2006 to 2012, making it the nation's 3rd largest buyer of those pills, behind Walgreens and CVS, according to a DEA data analysis. Right? Walmart operates 11,500 stores worldwide, including 5,300 Walmarts and Sam Club stores in the United States. It is the nation's largest private employer with roughly 1.5 million workers. That is on WashingtonPost.com. And check that out if you want to. Kind of rare that we're starting to see institutions being held accountable for what is an institutional issue. We have a way of sidestepping all of that. Too bad they didn't have this kind of energy when crack was decimating black communities in the 80s. But nevertheless, this is where we are. So y'all keep an eye out on this one. And we'll see what actually happens and if there's any judgments that actually get landed. So let's see. It's me. I can't see that. I think it's me. C. Thank you for becoming a new member. Appreciate that. Yeah. Mom shoots her 8-year-old son by accident while aiming at her husband. All right. Basically, the father and the mother were in an argument. Why? Because the father wanted to move out. She tried to shoot him and accidentally shot her 8-year-old son in the chest. All right. So this is in Texas, and the mother has been charged with an attempt to shoot her husband during a domestic incident at their home Friday. Antoinette Gina Corder, 31 years old, was given a charge of aggravated assault against a family member in connection to the shooting incident on the 6500 block of Dunlap. Happened around 11:05 a.m. Houston police shared in a press release that Corder and her husband had gotten into a verbal confrontation when she allegedly attempted to shoot the unidentified man. And as I said, she shot her son in the left chest area. At least up to this report, he's still alive from what I can tell. I haven't seen anything since this, but yeah. And we're seeing more and more of these cases, right? And I suspect that the pandemic and the COVID economy have had a lot to do with raising tensions. I'm interested in seeing the data that comes out, especially next year, about 2020, and the impact that the COVID economy has had on relationships. We know, the majority of relationships that fall apart have a lot to do with resources, money, issues of that nature. But there's been more than a few about women who've shot husbands who've been trying to leave. I reported a few months ago about a gentleman who walked in and actually found his wife having sex with another man, and she shot him when he began packing a bag. Similar case happened in Florida, where another man was killed actually trying to leave. So these kind of incidents are very interesting, and they seem to keep popping up. So here, no indication that he put hands on her, but just that he was trying to leave. Right. Anyway, sometimes I have things that I want to say, and I map them out. I even jot them down in notes, and then I read this stuff on air, and it's like, it's so damn ridiculous that I can't, even when I'm looking at the notes, I just can't bring myself to go through them, because I'm like, this is again, and again, we as black men become the face of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, even though the data shows that it's bidirectional. It's happening both ways, right? Women tend to use weapons more. They tend to strike first. Men tend to use their own hands, and they tend to do more damage, mainly because they're stronger. But yet, no dialogue whatsoever about men being on the receiving end of abuse, right? And then I got to argue with guys who swear to me, well, I can't be abused. I can't. No woman can do nothing to me. My word. How much strength does it take to throw some hot grease at you? Hot grits, knife, gun. What percentage of body fat do you have to where you can deflect bullets? It's ridiculous. This is a constant, and it's been a constant for a long time. Hell, in the 1970s, the rates were actually more women than men being abusers in the black community. Now it's bidirectional. And yet we still can't have a critical dialogue about the impact of this. Because again, going back to the SidePost article, if it highlights men, particularly black men, as victims, and it's especially if it's men who are stating it like myself, it's inherently a problem. There's actually a point where people shut off because it has to be a sexist gesture. This is what I was saying earlier when I talked about the, Kevin Samuels videos. I was saying the problem, they keep pointing to his tone and how he hurt women's feelings. That's not what it is. It's just the fact that it's a black male saying it. And this SidePost report is kind of really highlighting that to some extent. Even though it's a little different a situation, it's still the same. To hear black men articulate something that challenges our feminist sensibilities is conceived of or perceived as an inherently a problem, and inherently wrong for that matter, and therefore must be corrected by those who've been vetted and supported in regard to being pro-feminist or whatever. Ray, appreciate that support. Right. So as you can see here, the wealth of the world's billionaires grew by a staggering 1.9 trillion in 2020. Is anybody really surprised? I really included this because it had some bits of information I thought interesting. It's not hard to find, but I thought it would be some things that'd be good to have on mind. So it says there are only about 2,200 or so billionaires among the planet Earth's 7 billion strong population. Collectively, they grew 1.9 trillion richer this year, according to Forbes. That brings their total wealth to a staggering $11.4 trillion, a figure that increased 20% from just a year ago. And despite what is one of the most severe economic crises in modern history, of this rarefied class, 600 reside in the US and are worth 4 trillion, roughly double the wealth of China's billionaires at the time of publication. However, China outperformed the US when it comes to how much money was accumulated by its billionaires over the last 12 months. It saw a $750 billion increase compared to the US's $560 billion bump. France comes in a distant third with $500 billion of total billionaire wealth, up to $95 billion. Elon Musk takes the cake, having grown his personal fortune from $27 billion to $137 billion in a 12-month time frame. God damn. Thanks to a series of spikes in Tesla stock that made it the world's most valuable auto company. And though Jeff Bezos gained less than Musk this year, he's only up to $67.5 billion, he still sits atop the list overall with $182 billion to his name, largely thanks to the boost in Amazon stock caused by people shopping from home en masse. Yeah. And we're talking about an eviction apocalypse, right? We're talking about American citizens in particular who haven't been able to pay rent in months, while Congress is going back and forth with Trump over $600. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about $600. This is deep. This is deep. But I've been saying this for years, especially to my students. Capitalism is a pyramid. It is a pyramid. And at the very top are a very small population that have the most. And they only have the most at the expense of everybody else. That's the crux of how capitalism works. So when you have a philosophy that, as a community, we're really only going to try to emulate those top people in that percentage in hopes of mimicking them or becoming them one day, it's a lottery mentality. And it's not realistic. It's really not. For the overwhelming majority of the planet Earth. I mean, look at that. You got 7 billion people, 2,200 billionaires. Do we criticize the system that produces 2,200 billionaires, or do we criticize ourselves for not being billionaires? Illogical as it sounds, that's what we tend to do. and we chastise each other for it. Even in our community, this has been happening for the longest. I mean, we look down on each other for what we can and can't afford. We talk down. We all living in similar situations. We can all be living in the exact same poverty and point out, who got the best shoes on, who don't. We get into these kind of discussions, and yet, for the most part, our entire community is underwater. And right now, we're seeing this happening on a global scale. It's unprecedented. And yet, most of us are hoping we'll wake up one day and be Jeff Bezos. Interesting. And I thought it was bad when I met people who were trying to pay their rent with the lottery. And this is before the pandemic. Talking about, I'm going to go to the liquor store and I'm going to pay next month's rent with what I win. Word. That's what you're going to do? Anyway. Some interesting information. The virus is showing black people what they knew all along. More than 50,000 black Americans are now dead from COVID, according to data from COVID Racial Data Tracker. The collaboration between COVID Tracking Project and The Atlantic, and the Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research. All right. And we don't know the race or ethnicity of roughly 20,000 of the 319,000 Americans whose lives have been claimed by COVID. Everyone in the U.S. is at the mercy of the coronavirus. Doesn't discriminate by race or class or gender or age, and yet, from the very beginning of the pandemic, the virus has exposed and targeted all of the disparities that come along with being black in America. We are dying at 1.77 times the rate of white people from the virus, which means that the toll of these disparities has never been easier to quantify. 19,000 black people would still be alive if not for systemic racism. Interesting piece you can check out. I included it here really, for some of the data I thought was interesting. You can find this in theatlantic.com, as you can see. I'm going through this one pretty quickly because there's a couple others that kind of do it as well, and I kind of wanted to go there, but let me see. There was another part. Hold on. Let's see. For centuries, black people have spoken about the struggles we face, pointing to root causes like poverty, housing segregation, unemployment, and environmental degradation. And for centuries, those concerns have largely gone ignored. Same thing has happened with the pandemic. Long before any data confirmed our worst fears, black people knew that the coronavirus would disproportionately devastate our already vulnerable communities. Driven by that foresight, the author launched the newsletter, Coronavirus News for Black Folks, in early April. As the death toll crept up, the brutality of American racism became even clearer. Black people with the clear symptoms of COVID-19 were turned away from receiving tests, sometimes on multiple occasions, only to die at home. Black families were entirely destroyed as members died within weeks and days of one another. By the end of July, twice as many black children as white children had died of COVID-19. In Michigan, first child to die from the virus was a 5-year-old black girl who spent 2 weeks on a ventilator. Just as 1 in 3 black people knows someone directly who has died from COVID-19, 1 in 3 black people has said they will not get the vaccine, according to recent Kaiser Family Foundation study. I'm not really going to go into the vaccine. All I can say is there are going to be many people who are going to be pressured to take it, more than likely due to employment, due to practical needs. So we're going to see how this all unfolds. We're going to see how tied the vaccine will be to any kind of, what's the term, payout they're going to do. So we'll see how that's going to go. All I can say is, just make your best judgment, do your research, come to your own conclusions about, how you feel about it, what you're going to do. But unfortunately, there are going to be a wide number of people, I suspect, that will be forced to make a decision regardless of their politics. So just keep your eyes open and do the best you can as far as research is concerned. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but I appreciate the support. Anyway, I'll just call you what, because I don't know how to say the rest. But yes, Tone Talks did break down the wealth gap in detail. Black men are at the bottom. Only a small percentage do well. Absolutely. And I reference, Tone and Yvette's data all the time. As an academic, I appreciate data. So I'm not at all suggesting that what I'm saying is in replacement it's actually an addendum to, a small addition to what they're saying, because the data is real. And some of this data is only in the last 10 to 15 years become accessible. So anyway, this one is a little different. Something I wanted to alert you to, right? Dealing with human trafficking. And it talks about two types of trafficking, one having to do with sex trafficking and one having to do with labor. Now, we hear a lot about sex trafficking, although we hear very little about males, and males have been tied in the sex trafficking industry for centuries, particularly boys. Males are not immune to it. Now we have this narrative in the popular imagination that somehow it only affects women and doesn't affect. That's not the truth. But in this particular piece, I wanted to kind of look at labor trafficking, right? Which really one could definitely associate the transatlantic slave trade with, but you could also associate the prison industrial complex in many ways. So, but it's interesting. If you can go to this particular report, Administration for Children and Families dealing with human trafficking, you can find this, as you can see, on acf.hhs.gov, and it deals in depth with the definition of labor trafficking. And so it says labor trafficking, individuals are compelled to work or provide services through use of force, fraud, or coercion. Force, fraud, or coercion. Individuals from any class, religion, cultural, or ethnic group can be targeted in human trafficking schemes. Following groups are especially vulnerable. Now, it's a given, according to this data, that, undocumented workers can be a part of it. But what I pulled out were the bullet points that I think highlight Black men's susceptibility to labor trafficking, right? Individuals who have experienced childhood abuse or neglect, children and youth involved in the foster care and juvenile justice systems, people experiencing homelessness. Now, we knew back really before COVID, that Black America constituted half of America's, the Black homeless constituted half of America's homeless population. But what a lot of people didn't want to do is disaggregate the data by gender. And what we know is that men tend to find themselves across race as the larger homeless group. And when you factor in the number of Black men that have been incarcerated and how incarceration plays into homelessness, meaning men coming out of prison often have no place to go, and even if they're able to get a housing voucher, can't often get it honored, we find that population fed into the homeless. And if you're not sure, you can definitely go down to various areas like LA's tent city and just walk around and look at who you see. And that's not to say there aren't many groups aren't represented, but it is to say that even though we're a smaller population, statistically speaking, we are highly susceptible to homelessness, Black men in particular, right? So again, when I'm looking at these bullet points in regard to labor trafficking, they seem to coincide. So, the third bullet was people experiencing homelessness, survivors of violence, racial and ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, people with low incomes, people with a history of substance abuse, communities exposed to intergenerational trauma. That sounds rather familiar. D-Rock, what's up? Unsunken, exactly. Jay Jermaine, appreciate that support. All right. So check into this if you're interested, but I want us to actually start talking about trafficking, not just in terms of what we're popularly given, but in terms of how it impacts us most. And I think when we start to talk about human trafficking in regard to labor, we find there's a conversation to be had about men that we yet again sidestep. Right? It's not limited to, sex trafficking in women, even though, again, males are subject to sex trafficking. But there is another aspect to this that needs to be looked at. So again, there are many different populations affected by this. LGBT populations are affected. There's no question that, undocumented immigrants are affected. But I want to specifically highlight the issues that point to Black men, because I think it's a group that's overlooked. And I think it's a group that is more than likely highly susceptible to this. All right. D-Rock, appreciate that support. I thought this one would lighten the mood a little, just for a quick second. South Carolina councilwoman indicted for using government credit cards to stalk Magic Johnson. and meet Richard Seymour. Councilwoman has turned her career and life upside down after she was indicted on public corruption charges for using government credit cards to book expensive trips, one of which to Newark, in order to stalk NBA Hall of Famer Magic Johnson. Richland County Council Vice Chairwoman Dolly Myers lost this year's Democratic primary election for the Council District 10 and has since been suspended from office by the governor. She used government funds to seek out Johnson and former NFL defensive lineman Richard Seymour in an attempt to talk to them about an undisclosed topic. State Grand Jury Division Chief Attorney Creighton Waters told the judge the 52-year-old attempted to reimburse the county, but her $27,000 check bounced as high as any Super Bowl could bounce. On top of stalking Johnson and trying to meet Seymour, she also had trips to Greece, Detroit, Nashville, Tennessee, and pay for chocolates, books, and a cell phone. She also used her government card to buy personal items at Sam's Club and Staples, including Godiva chocolates, Slim Jims, and drinks. It's interesting how they can get this detailed about, her buying Slim Jims, but I wonder how many freaking generations of politicians have been able to get away with this without so much as an acknowledgement. Although I do find it interesting that she's stalking black male athletes. I'm sorry. This shit was just hilarious to me. Oh my God. D. Smitty, I appreciate that support. I mean, I'm sorry, baby. That's I don't even know. Slim Jims? Like, word, they have it to that degree? Oh my goodness. I'm wondering if they had condoms and Cavassier in there. I mean, I'm just surprised they didn't go there, but I'm both. It's a weird split, right? I'm in a position where I know they don't do this to generations of white politicians who have done much worse than this, and we've often never found out about. And then at the same time, I look at this in terms of the sisters in positions of authority that we're seeing more and more, statistically speaking, in regard to electoral positions. We're finding that there are a considerable number of black women, and have been, for a while now, 10 to 15 years especially, many more of them. And a lot of this has to do with higher education, right? Greater accessibility to higher education has made electoral politics, far more available in certain regards. And I've also argued that when it even comes to the parents of slain black males, particularly by the cops, there are opportunities to access, politics, positions that normally wouldn't be accessible, but more so for the mothers than the fathers, right? But nevertheless, either one of those contexts allow for greater access than the average black man tends to have. And we've gone over the education data in the last few months that lends itself to this. So I think it all ends up kind of contributing in an interesting way, where we find, a greater percentage of black women having access to these types of positions. And, we have to ask the question, what are we doing it for? Right? This one, I think many of you saw, right? Boy, 2 years old, abandoned at Goodwill drop-off with no socks or jacket, and a note saying his mother can't take care of him anymore. Mississippi police are investigating after a 2-year-old boy was abandoned at a Goodwill drop-off location with nothing but a note and a bag of clothes. The toddler, too young to know his own name, was left outside a Goodwill donation center with a note which reportedly said his mother cannot take care of him. Security camera images released by police show he was dropped off at a South Haven, store by a man wearing a mask and a cowboy hat, and left with a change of clothes at 9:50 a.m. Officers released a photo of the little boy, who wasn't wearing any socks or a warm coat. Also had photos of two suspects, a man and a woman, and the vehicle they were driving when the child was abandoned. Nearly 6 hours later, they were arrested. A person related to the incident, according to a person related to the incident, I think they meant to say, The male child is approximately 2 years old and is unable to give his name. Let me see. Nearby surveillance captured images of a man and woman. I keep repeating that. Police Chief Macon Moore later said a suspect was taken into custody at 3:30 p.m. yesterday, but no suspect information or charges are being released. And to my knowledge, they only arrested the man. So, yeah. And again, based on the economy we're seeing, I think we're going to see more of this. You know, more of this kind of thing, whether we're talking about intimate partner violence issues over money, over, presence, right? Staying put, this kind of issue of leaving, as well as children, children not being, people not being able to pay for their children. There have been some traumatic cases that I've seen in the last few weeks alone, where, parents are killing their children, particularly mothers. Right? And this is where we're seeing it go. Right? Now, this one actually takes us to the continent, takes us to Nigeria. Is a continuation of, one that came out a number of years ago in regard to Boko Haram. Right. And this has to do with Nigerian boys taken in kidnapping claimed by Boko Haram are freed. More than 300 schoolboys kidnapped in northern Nigeria have been handed over to security agencies. 344 schoolboys kidnapped by gunmen from their boarding school in northwest Nigeria last week were handed over to security agencies late Thursday, Nigeria's government said, prompting outpourings of relief and joy across Africa's most populous nation after fears they would become long-term hostages of jihadist militants. The release comes 6 days after the students were seized from their dormitories at the Kinkara Government Science Secondary School in Katsina and driven into the nearby forest, making one of the largest mass school kidnappings in history. President Muhammadu Buhari praised the military and security agencies in a statement that offered prayers for the full recovery of the victims. They endured significant hardships in the course of their ordeal, the statement said. A local newspaper, the Katsina Post, tweeted images of the dozens of schoolboys jammed into the back of trucks, some looking dazed, but others sporting wide smiles for the camera as they headed toward home. Government officials said the boys would be given new clothes before an audience with the president on Friday. It couldn't immediately be determined if the group released included all boys who were taken in the raid. Several who escaped said that some had died during the abduction and their march through the forest. Others said that the kidnappers had stopped to count the hostages and tallied more than 500. Hours before the governor's announcement on Thursday, Boko Haram released a video purporting to show dozens of schoolboys. In the grainy 6-minute video, the hostages said that some of their classmates had died during their captivity and begged for the government to negotiate their release. Mass abduction came 6 years after the kidnapping of 276 schoolgirls in the town of Chibok, an abduction that ignited the global Bring Back Our Girls campaign. After 3 years, 103 were freed for a ransom that people involved said included the exchange of 5 imprisoned militants and £3 billion, I think it is £3 million, and $3.7 million. The government has denied paying a ransom. Every time I see these stories, they always seem to forget about the 59 boys who were killed outright at their school. At roughly just before the 276 schoolgirls were killed. And I wrote a piece on my blog at that time where I was saying, I have no problem with hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. I just have a problem with the absence of hashtag Keep Our Boys Alive. And I found there was little empathy for the boys who had been slaughtered. Now I'm happy to hear that these boys made their way home. But of course, there looks to be around 160 of them that did not make it. And so as much as I'm glad that they were able to return home, I hope that we can actually start talking about boys in a way that we don't. Because especially when we hear about them being victims, there's almost a lack of empathy on a grand scale. And I just, especially at that time, right? I'm looking at pictures of just slain boys. Anyway, so I hope we can develop a new empathy for boys in general, but especially boys of African descent. I'm not going to spend much time on this one. This is basically a Bank of America and her agenda founder partner to educate millennial women about home ownership. This is what I've been talking about for months. Kinds of programs that have become newly available, particularly to Black women. I have yet to hear about any significant programs of stature supported by any large institutions, most especially that target Black males. Right. So again, this is a you know, by a woman named Renisha Buying. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. And in partnership with Bank of America, is founder and CEO of a company called Her Agenda, a digital media platform providing career-driven women resources to advance into their professions. And it kind of goes from there. The initiative will also work with eligible home buyers with up to up to 17,500 in financial assistance. Yeah. So anyway, not going to go into a whole lot of depth, but I just point these out at this point just to kind of show you, if you're not seeing the shea butter commercials, and there's actually a lot more than just shea butter, but if you're not seeing all the random commercials, if you're not in the nonprofit, grant researching business, if you're not in those circles seeing the priority that Black men are not getting, it's incidents like these that kind of highlight it. So, I just kind of pointed out, I haven't seen these kind of things for men yet, but I'm sure it will be articulated as Black men's fault on some level. Police shot a Philly man and accused him of rape. He was exonerated after 19 years. Right? It was before dawn on November 27, 2001, and Tremaine Joseph Hicks was at the wrong place at precisely the wrong time. A woman had been pistol whipped, dragged into an alleyway behind what was then St. Agnes Hospital in South Philadelphia, and raped until the rapist was startled and fled the scene. Hicks heard her screams and rushed to help. But seconds later, police officers arrived, took him for the rapist, and shot him 3 times. For trying to help. Hicks survived, but was charged with rape and sentenced to 12.5 to 25 years in prison. On Wednesday, after 19 years incarceration, Hicks, now 45 years old. This man, from 25 to 45, there's really, I'm not going to say there's any time period that's best to lose 20 years of your life. But 25 to 45 are key years. Damn it. Philadelphia District Attorney's Conviction Integrity Unit agreed with Hicks and his lawyers, civil rights attorney Susan Lynn, and the Innocence Project that the case was built on lies, possibly to cover up the unjustified shooting, that were contradicted by newly analyzed and compelling forensic evidence. Right? Philadelphia Common Plea Court Judge Tracy Brandeis Roman vacated the conviction and offered a bittersweet congratulations to Hicks. She also extended an apology to the victim, whose name was withheld. "I am quite cognizant of the pain and trauma of the victim, and then more pain in realizing that the wrong person was convicted," the judge said. But she added, "I do feel that one case at a time, the system is being improved." So now they're trying to turn this into how well the system works. Okay. At the time of his arrest, Hicks was an assistant manager at a South Philly Popeyes, raising a 5-year-old son. One of the bullets that entered the back of his arm lodged in his chest, collapsing a lung and requiring emergency surgery. He was arraigned while handcuffed to a hospital bed. The new analysis outlined a case in which ample physical evidence available 19 years ago ought to have been able to clear him, Hicks, who was known in court records as Jermaine Weeks. Police officer Martin Vinson said he shot Hicks in the chest or stomach as Hicks was pulling a gun from his pocket and lunging toward him. Hicks said the officer shot him in the back as he was reaching into his pocket for his phone to call 911. Both a forensic analysis of Hicks's medical records and a review of his clothing with bullet holes in the back but none in the front supported Hicks's account, according to the city's chief medical examiner. Pokin said further evidence suggested police planted the gun they said they retrieved from his jacket pocket. She noted that the gun was smeared with blood, while the inside of Hicks's coat pocket was clean. He was always maintained that he arrived at the scene when he attempted to help the victim. He had his hand in his pocket because he was going to attempt to call the police when they arrived and shot him in the back. Police claimed that Mr. Hicks had a gun, and as part of their effort to cover up the circumstances of the shooting, but the weapon that was attributed to Mr. Hicks was registered to an active Philly police officer. The officer had not reported the gun missing. God damn. Hicks is the 16th person exonerated by the Conviction Integrity Unit since District Attorney Larry Krasner took office in 2018. And we know, across the board, half the men exonerated are black men. So this is not new. This has been happening consistently. And I hear people all the time saying, black men deserve to go to jail, they just commit crime. Well, not only does everybody commit crime, but there's a focus that really goes back to practices that are generations old in terms of seeing black men as dangerous, inherently criminalistic, and so forth. And when certain police officers have the opportunity to throw a black male in jail simply because he's there, look how long it took for even the most basic of evidence to prove his innocence. And then the question you have to ask is, how many black men are not able to provide evidence to that degree? Man lost 20 years, damn near. For what? Trying to help a woman who was hurt. Well, I can tell you, Tremaine Joseph Hicks, brother, I wish you peace. I hope you're able to get yours. Right? 311 watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Support the channel as usual. This one, y'all gonna have to help me with this. I didn't know what to really. This is ex-wife of Raphael Warnock of the Democrats running in Georgia Senate runoffs. Basically, she argued that he ran over her foot with the car after an argument. Says newly released police body cam footage shows the ex-wife of Reverend Raphael Warnock, one of the two Democrats in the U.S. Senate runoff elections in Georgia, accusing him of running over her foot during a domestic dispute in March. God damn. The footage of the couple's interviews with the police was aired by Tucker Carlson on Fox News. In the video, I guess her name is Alayi Nadoye, can be heard telling an officer that Warnock ran over her foot during the argument. She said he was trying to drive off with their two children in the back seat. That's all I know about it. I don't have any other information. I don't really know what to make of it yet, and I'm not familiar with him or her for that matter. So anybody that has any more information about that, please sound off in the comments. But again, I think what attracted me to this was just the tensions, the intimate partner violence issues that we're seeing more and more of during the pandemic, just like we saw during the Great Recession, 2007, 2008, right? We saw an increase in suicides. We saw an increase in domestic violence and some intimate partner violence. And I think the data is going to show something very similar here. So again, if you have any more information about this story, let me know. Put it in the comment section. The subtext of the story, I can't say yet. Again, I'm not familiar with him, but I'm damn sure curious. So if you guys run into any other articles, feel free to shoot them at me. All right. It's a couple more. So here we go. Michigan man spends 37 years in prison, freed after witness says she lied. Michigan man, right? His name is Walter Forbes, was wrongfully imprisoned for 37 years until a witness admitted that she lied in her story. Anise Kennebrew, the star witness that landed Forbes in prison for nearly 4 decades, said she fabricated a tale because she was intimidated by 2 local men who threatened her and her family. Kennebrew's false testament led to Forbes getting convicted for arson and murder in 1982. According to court documents obtained by the Detroit Free Press, A February 2020 evidentiary hearing states that Kennebrew testified she had falsely implicated Mr. Forbes because she had been intimidated into doing so by two local men who knew her from around the neighborhood and who had threatened to harm her and her family if she did not implicate Mr. Forbes. Forbes, now 63, was sentenced to life in prison. He was released on November 20th. This all started on July 11th, 1982, when Forbes broke up a bar fight, which led one of the men involved, Dennis Hall, to shoot him. The following day, Hall died after a fire was set at his apartment. Damn. 37 years ago, Kennebrew testified that three men, including Forbes, burned down Hall's apartment. It was not until 2017 that she decided to come clean. Prosecutors say the owner of Hall's apartment is responsible for his death, as it was later discovered to be an arson for insurance money scheme for which the owner was later convicted. The owner has not, however, been officially implicated in Hall's death. The statute of limitations for perjury lasts for 6 years, meaning Kennebrew got away with lying to authorities and the judge and will not face any new charges. $37 years. 37 years. I see one of the most frustrating things about being a black male is you know how easy it is for someone's word to put you away arbitrarily. You know it. It's easy. In a court of public opinion, an accusation is damn near as good as a conviction. Your reputation can leave you broken and homeless in and of itself, but you can end up in prison very easily simply because somebody doesn't like you or doesn't like something you've said or something you've done. Again, I hope this brother as well gets his due. And even though her case is a little different in terms of her being threatened, if that is indeed true, but in and of itself, when I see similar cases, I don't really see follow-up cases much that show any of these women doing any time, serious time for false accusations. Y'all can let me know. Officer Faulkner, definitely let me know. But I don't see it. I don't see them, suffering the impact of what they've done to men who are highly susceptible to being accused and, of doing something they didn't do and having it be believed. And we really don't know how to have this conversation because it implicates women in a way that you're not allowed to implicate in public. Right? You're supposed to believe the self-proclaimed victim at all times, even if half the men being exonerated are black, decades after the case. Okay. Last one for tonight. Former NBA player Junior Bridgeman buys Ebony magazine for $14 million. This is in the Griot. Former Milwaukee Bucks forward bought Ebony in U.S. bankruptcy court this week. Once a pillar of black business founded by John H. Johnson in 1945, the magazine enjoyed decades of popularity before declining advertising revenues and the internet caused it to fall on hard times. In 2016, Ebony and its sister publication Jet was sold to the private equity fund CVG Group out of Texas. But by 2018, Ebony had to settle an $80,000 lawsuit with dozens of freelancers who never received payments for contribution to the magazine and website, further damaging the brand. By 2019, the magazine had ceased publication and its historic photography archive was put up for sale. The collection of 4 million photos was ultimately purchased jointly by 4 foundations that donated it to the Smithsonian Museum for African American History and Culture and the Getty Research Institute, ensuring that it would be available to the public, per the New York Times. After defaulting on $10 million in loans in July, CVG Group was forced into a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, ultimately converting to a Chapter 11 reorganization. Bridgeman was able to make a successful bid for the brands this week. Leonard Simon, a Houston attorney representing Ebony Media Group, says The sale is likely to be approved by Tuesday per the Tribune. So here you have, you know, former NBA player was able to buy this. If this is able to launch and get off the ground, I hope, if nothing else, he will make sure that black men have a better presence than what we've traditionally seen in many of the magazines we've been seeing over the years. So let's definitely hope that's the case, and see where this goes. All right, so again, support the channel. And before we get into our main subject, let's check this out. Please make sure you guys support the Institute for Black Male Studies. You can go to www.instituteforblackmalestudies.com to do so. There are classes and webinars already available, with more to come, especially in the next month, as well as plenty of merchandise. If you click the merchandise link, you can find t-shirts such as Black Fatherhood is the Cure. You can find the Onyx Report based commandments, Black Brotherhood commandments that have been posted and put up on t-shirts, as well as, you know, go ahead and pick up a hoodie or a shirt. This is one of the supporters of the Institute, Eddie, and Eddie M was able to send a picture in of a recent hoodie he bought. So shout out to him. Appreciate that. And we are glad to have you. Okay. So I'm going to welcome a couple of people to the stream. You guys make sure you have your background noise set down. So I'm gonna welcome them in, and then we're gonna walk through a couple things together to kind of break down some of what we got on the table, right? So I am going to welcome three good friends of mine, all right? The G with the PhD, right? Artisan MC, and of course, BGS Ibmore, also known, I believe they call him the Master Teacher. What's up, y'all?
What's good? What's up, Dr. G?
What's going on?
Man, you hear that echo?
Yeah, I do. Let me see. Damn it. This is one of those things where I got to ask the audience again. What are you guys hearing? Is there echo? Is there a bad sound? Let me know. Let's see.
I echoing?
I can't hear anything bad yet. I always have to
Yeah,
ask
you gotta exit and come back in. Just click the tab, and then come right back in.
Damn it.
Yeah, I gotta go out back in.
Why is it always me? That's what I don't understand.
You don't turn on. You can't get right. He can't get right, Master. What's good, Artisan? BGS?
What's good, G?
Nothing to it, man.
G, good Master Teacher.
What's going on, Doctor? What's going on, Artisan MC?
Oh, I'll let you know that the package has arrived. The bird has landed.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I was a good grief, man. I sent it supposed to be like almost a week ago, man.
Well, you better get some money back, because that was not their priority.
Right. I'm back in. Can you guys hear everything?
We can hear you fine. Was it intact, Artisan?
I haven't seen it yet. I just got a message from my coworker that I got a package.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Hold on, man. I'll be right back. I got this chicken in the oven. Hold on. Hold on.
Bird in the kitchen.
Why it gotta be chicken? Why it gotta be chicken?
Chicken
All right,
in the kitchen.
Hold on, people. All right. So we're going to get started. God damn.
Bird in the kitchen. I'm telling you. One line when you said a G.
Levity already, huh?
I guess, man. Y'all. All right.
Is there watermelon in the refrigerator?
Great drink.
He said drink.
Great drink. Red soda water.
All right. So check this out. We're going to get started, but we're going to start in a different way. We're going to start with John Henry. And there's a couple of pieces out that I definitely want to get you guys, get your feedback on as we jump in. And I'm sure we'll be able to make connections because there are plenty to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll see if this changes the damn sound again. I don't know what happens with this. All right, so there's 2 articles out this week that I wanted to get y'all's feedback on and make some kind of statements about. And they both have to do with a similar concept, right? So this one here, you can see black men have the shortest lifespans of any Americans. This theory helps explain why. So ProPublica.org, and they talk about the unrelenting stress of fighting systemic racism and how it can alter a body's normal functioning and cause it to wear down. And they attribute this to a concept called John Henry Ism, which, you know, we've been dealing with in black male studies for a minute, but it defines John Henry Ism as black people have higher rates of hypertension, obesity, diabetes, and strokes than whites, and they develop those chronic conditions up to 10 years earlier. Studies link these health problems to stress. Unique, unrelenting strain caused by racism can alter a body's normal functioning until it starts to wear down. John Henrys, who battle with an unequal system as they try to get ahead in life, bear the consequences in their bodies. The stress is going to be far more overwhelming than it has a human right to be, and is linked to underlying conditions that black people develop younger and are the very ones that make people more vulnerable to the worst outcomes from the coronavirus. When the Brookings Institute examined COVID-19 deaths by race, black people were dying at roughly the same rate as whites, more than a decade older. They could have done so much more had the struggle not been so intense. Right. So this is the first article.
Yeah,
And
which
the
with the
second
COVID-19 data is actually BS. I'm not going to cuss on your channel, but there's reasons for this, because there was a article about a black female doctor that died because of mistreatment of COVID-19. So there's that factor. But continue.
Okay. Let's add that to this one here. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see this one, but this one is made by the same website, ProPublica.org, how COVID-19 hollowed out a generation of young black men. And it talks about the impact of John Henryism and COVID-19 on black men in their 40s as opposed to in their 60s. So it says COVID-19 has killed 1 out of every 800 African Americans, a toll that overwhelms the imagination. Even more stunning is the deadly efficiency with which it has targeted young black men altogether. One study using data through July found that black people ages 35 to 44 were dying at 9 times the rate of white people the same age, though the gap slightly narrowed later in the year. And in an analysis for ProPublica this summer, using the only reliable data at the time, accounting for age, race, and gender, from Michigan to Georgia, Harvard researcher Tamara Rusovich found that the disparity was greatest in black men. And then they begin to highlight from there, you know, this real impact of 45-year-old men as opposed to 60 and 70-year-old men, and the impact that all of that begins to have. And the last link to this that I'll put up is something I think everybody saw. If you watch the recent episode of Ayanna Van Zant's, what is that? What's this?
Fix My Life.
Fix My Life. Thank you. And this gentleman here who, you know, went viral, I want to say, was it last year? For a video talking about how well he supported his family. And of course, his family went in on him by the time he got on Ayanna. But this linkage to John Henryism, right, is what I'm really interested in talking to y'all about tonight as we, you know, transition from this to Ma Rainey. I wanted to kind of start with this because I don't think this gets enough conversation. I don't think this gets enough conversation. I think a lot of people dismiss it, even though we've all seen it. We've all experienced it, even if it's, you know, from ourselves, right? But this idea that your worth and your value is solely determined by
your utility.
Your utility, even to the point of death, right? You know, so I really leave it at that, and I want you guys to jump in and just kind of give me your impressions about John Henryism and what you think. So we can jump in because I don't know who's who's eating chicken, who's cooking, who's we're just gonna find out.
I'll go first.
Come on, man. Don't do that, bro.
You gotta clean his fingers first.
Hey, Hasan, don't do that, bro. I can't call you Doc right now for doing that.
So y'all,
I'm just teasing. I'm teasing.
so y'all jump in. What are we looking at here with John Henryism? What's your thoughts?
Basically, man, from the very beginning, man, when they found out that we didn't die from diseases, we've been utilities, and our bodies have been utilities from the very beginning. This is nothing new. And basically, the story of John Henry was basically the antebellum slavery and man as machine, which is the original machine in capitalism, versus the industrial capitalism, which is the steam engine. Okay, as the thing that the steam engine was supposed to replace are black bodies, or black male bodies, and we've had that stigma ever since. Even after we got freed, after emancipation, Jim Crow was no better for black men than it was under slavery, because 25% of black men died under Jim Crow in prisons, in work camps, being hung. Even, I mean, when we get to Ma Rainey's, the story that Levy told about his father, that's common.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, and you could see it. This is John Henryism. Basically, black man is object. Black man is basically a resource, a human resource, not even a human doing, a human being, but a human resource, something to be used, even by our own women.
And do you guys see that still happening? Because some people will say, well, this is, that was our grandfather's generation. That was just,
happened today to me.
How about the little boy when they ran out of money? What they do to him? The little 2-year-old couldn't even say his own name. Would they have done that to a little girl? Just drop you off.
No. Well,
he wasn't worth anything anymore.
Artisan started to say something. I want you to continue on that. What did you say, man?
I was just making the comment, not to cut off the master teacher, but that happens to me today. That happened to me today, and not that it just happens today. It has been happening the whole time I've been on this job. And
can you say what you do, or?
Yeah, I'm working construction. I'm not doing what I would usually do. I'm taking a lesser position because it was COVID, and a motherfucker need to work. I mean, not to cuss and put too fine of a point on it, but that's what it is. You gotta hustle. It's California. It's not cheap. So
real talk.
Rent still
and
needs
you
to
in
be
the
paid.
Bay, right? You in the Bay?
Yeah, I'm in the Bay. So rent still needs to be paid. Right. So we had this, just to make it short. We had this. We're finishing up the building. We should be out of here by February. We had this big walk with all the VPs coming through here, right? And these are all Caucasians, right? These are all white folks. I'm on this floor because this is my floor. I'm responsible for this floor, which is the penthouses, 41, right? Why am I on that floor? I'm on that floor because I'm the biggest black dude they have there, who's the strongest. So I've been there since June on that floor, and because I could lift all these heavy panels and all the rest of that stuff, they wanted me on that floor. Those white boys who ran that company, oh, he big, he's strong, let's keep him up here. That's why they wanted me up there. That's why I tell people, if you want to think slavery is gone, go work on a construction site. You'll find out real quickly it's not gone. It's still here. They still do it. The same thing. My whole value on that job is that I am strong and I am big. And in some senses, I'm intimidating to other people, so they don't mess with me. But it don't take into account my damn degrees. It doesn't take into account how many decades I've been working in this trade, doing more than what I'm doing right now. It doesn't take into account my last job and how I actually ran crews and stuff like that. It don't take into account none of that stuff. They only want me there because I'm big and strong. Okay. That's John Henry all day. Just a tool. It's just a fleshy tool to be used.
Now, in the last show, I told a story about a lecture that was given on my campus by a feminist scholar, and she basically watered black patriarchy down to the big piece of chicken. And as absurd as that is, you know, even to the extent that that's been historically the case, where a man was reserved a big piece of chicken in his family, it actually had a lot to do with what Artisan just broke down. The type of labor involved, right, had very much to do with it. It wasn't just an arbitrary designation of power.
No.
It was often tied to the kinds of labor that black men continue to perform, you know, deep into the 20th century and still are, right? But my next question is how is this type of sacrificial labor received, do you think, in 2020? And I'm gonna put that to, you know, either BGS or GG. What do y'all think? How is it received at this point?
I want to hear the man with the big piece of chicken respond to that first. Because he got me hungry.
Man,
you said chicken.
man,
I'm hungry. I ain't ate dinner yet, man. You got me fucked up.
Man, you out there slaving on that construction site, man. You need to get you a big piece so you can get that energy going. Get you a big sack of potatoes. No, I'm just being silly. But, you know, I used to work in construction as well, man. I did iron work for about 5-6 years, and it's back-breaking work, you know, and you know, for the most part, man, if you're black on the job, you're there from the neck down. That's what we say in the trade. That's what they said where I was from. Like, I'm here from the neck down, meaning that, you know, you're not there for your brain and your capacity to reason through the blueprints and to make sure that the job is going the way it ought to. You're there to pack steel. You're there to, you know, make sure that the work is done at a rote physical level. But, you know, as it pertains to, you know, John McHenry Ism today, you know, most of the jobs that black men perform are menial, labor-intensive jobs, and there are not enough of them to go around at the current moment. And the odd thing about it is, you know, at the very same time that there's a dearth of jobs for black men to perform, there is an overabundance of women who are looking for men who are making 6 figures.
Weird.
And then you start to look at it and you say to yourself, how does it compute? At the very same time that increasingly women are given more opportunities to enter into service-based positions, black men are still required to do everything that they were expected to do related to a social and economic arrangement, or, you know, the kind of status quo. It doesn't exist anymore. And so to require that, it almost seems cruel. It's the ultimate slap in the face. But that's just my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, you're still a conky, sir.
Yeah. I see your view.
Yeah, you're still a conky, sir. It hasn't changed. And basically, culture changes very slowly. And black women's culture seems to not change at all, which is strange. They're still holding on to, you know, 1960s ideals about black men for us, but not for them.
Well, but there's kind of a cherry picked kind of thing when it comes to, you know, more updated expectations, right? Because one of the things we've seen with black men prior to the 1970s and maybe even the 60s, depending on how far back you take it, the expectation on black men was to provide and protect. And then I would say, especially in the early 80s and the influence of feminism again, you had this new expectation about emotional presence and in family settings and whatnot. And yet how we've been socialized has had little to do with that, but it became an expectation nonetheless. So when I first saw this video on social media where he was talking about being a real man because he was able to provide for his family, that didn't surprise me in the slightest. What was an interesting bookend was the Ayanla Fix My Life episode with his family there and the degree of ire and disdain that they had for him. You know, and I was curious what you guys thought about it, if you'd had a chance to watch it.
It basically, you're expected to step in a white man's boots without the boots, because that stuff is what white feminists have trained women, and, you know, all women, not just white women but black women, to want. That more engaged, emotionally intelligent man. And that's what their teachings teach them that they should want in their life. But the thing is, when they put on the application, when they want out of a man, it's still the same thing. Provide and protect. Be the big macho man. Be the guy that actually goes out and earns all the money, and where she doesn't have to work, and then still being the Mandingo in the bedroom. Those three things haven't changed. But now
Sounds
they
like
want
a
now they
scene out
want
of
emotional.
Fences.
Now they want now they want emotional intelligence and caring on top of that.
Man,
After you've provided it, after you
and you know
provide
what's
everything else. Go ahead.
man, what's funny to me is, look, what I've noticed, all that emotional sensitivity, like I remember the song from Ralph Tresvant back in the day. You need
Oh
a man with
man.
sensitivity,
Oh man.
and you don't need a man who'll give you money. You need a man with sensitivity. Okay, so the more you share your emotions with women, the more of a turnoff it becomes to them. That's just been my experience.
Yeah, it is.
Like
It
if you
is.
begin to
I
tell
tried
them what your problems are,
it.
how your day was, what you
Kiwi.
feel, they expect for you to be John Henry. There
Yeah.
are no problems in my life. Everything is centered around you and your feelings and your problems. And your problems. But look, this is so. I had a lecture tonight, and usually I'm ranting and raving, fussing and cussing, But I decided to dial it back a bit and to kind of give my explanation about what I think human beings are actually like. So I started to engage in this conversation about the metaphysics of the person. But
Which was good talk.
but ultimately, I think the human beings are emotional reciprocators. But there's no room for emotions for men. They say that they want them, but they really don't want them
They don't want them.
Yeah, they don't.
because they crowd up too much space. I've been told if I share my emotions that
Yeah.
you're hogging up the emotional space. Like, can you imagine that? Like, I didn't know that there was an apportionment
It
or a
is.
box that you were putting
It is.
emotions into to where
Inside of her. Yeah.
like, okay,
You went past your 10%, sir. That's what happened.
I don't get that though. Like, how is it possible for emotions to even take up space? I didn't know that they took up space.
You're supposed to be sensitive to her needs. That's what they really want. If you even listen to the family that was talking about it, they weren't talking about him sharing himself and what he feels about himself and his day and his emotions. They wanted him to be sensitive to their emotions and actually do the emotional labor for them. That's what they
Man,
wanted.
see, we've arrived at a time where this is just not going to work anymore, man. And this is why. Like, people listen to my show oftentimes and they get taken aback by some of the things that I say. And what I'm trying to demonstrate by means of my anger and my righteous indignation and even my profanity is that there's room for black male expression. But they don't make space for it. It's like, why don't you be quiet? Why don't you just do what you're supposed to do, which is attend to my needs, attend to my financial needs, attend to my sexual needs, attend to my emotional needs, and be quiet.
And be quiet. Yeah. Serve.
And
Yes.
I want the big piece of chicken.
Yeah.
And I want your money, and I get to keep all of my money. And you do what I tell you. I mean, I'm like, men are going through this, and it's like, wait a minute.
I used to call it insert man here, and that was in the 90s. That was what I noticed just dating, that was the kind of dynamic. But you're dead on, man, in terms of what's expected. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's unrealistic, and yet it's widely accepted, I would argue.
It's widely accepted.
And it's widely accepted.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, all of this is predicated upon a modern conception of what a human being is, and what traditional roles men are supposed to fulfill versus what women are supposed to fulfill. And also it's predicated upon this antiquated Victorian notion of womanhood and what women are deserving of. But I find it odd, and it's kind of contradictory for women to want to enter into the space of social equality, but at the same time demanding the norms associated with traditional masculinity in relationships.
Right, which is not equality.
And it's like, so in this culture, people are bifurcated. They're like cut into a million different pieces every which way. And people don't know how to act. They don't know how to perform. They don't know what they're supposed to do in the context of relationships. And they're all predicated upon like this ephemeral and it's like superficial conceptualization of happiness, you know, and it's like a hedonist, superficial and shallow hedonism. I think it's out of control nowadays.
It is out of control.
And you know, I don't know how to, you know, exactly put a handle on it, but at some point something's got to give. I mean, we're already at the like critical mass in terms of the destruction of the black family.
It would either I'm not gonna say it here, but you know, Dr. J knows how I feel about it, but I'm not gonna say it here. It will either adapt it or will go away. One of the two.
That's the PG way of putting it.
Yeah, it was. That was way PG. Disney could have aired that.
Yeah. No, but it's definitely something that I wanted to put on the table, especially as we transition, because I think it's an important point. First, in terms of what's expected of black men, and John Henry Ism is one of those things. I mean, it's part of our socialization in one vein. And yet it's a bait and switch. We're expected to provide it, but you can't be obvious about it. And I think one of the things that frustrated not just his own family, but a lot of women in particular, was that he actually gave himself a pat on the back for being able to do it, being able to meet this standard. And so the opportunity that they had to point out how many other standards he didn't meet seemed to be an almost cultural imperative. Like you can't be successful at this standard because as a black male, you have to be positioned as a failure in one way or another. And so the very beginning of the episode, they start in with, well, he provides money, but you know, he doesn't provide enough time. Well,
I was going to make money
let me interject here, man. I've heard this before. You know how the story goes. Even with white women, I've heard the story. Well, the guy comes home from work, finds a man in the bedroom with his wife, and then he asks her, "Why are you doing this?" "Well, you're never around. You work too much."
Right.
You know, so it's like,
right, Gigi.
It's like a catch-22. If you work, and you're the kind of man that they want in relation to being able to earn.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what they want. But that kind of success requires a great deal of time expenditure. And you can't, if you want, you can't have every perfect condition. And look, and let me tell you something. I think part of this, though, I'm getting philosophical here, but I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna tone it down after this.
No, go ahead.
No, go in.
But I think that, you know,
go in, Luther. Go in.
No, I'm not going to Luther it. I'm going to be cerebral about this. But I think that, you know, Western culture is predicated upon idealism. Okay, and this starts from the tradition of Plato. Like, when you create the perfect ideal of what something is supposed to be like, and then you measure reality up to your ideal of it. And I'm a realist. You know, I'm a naturalist. Let me not say I'm a realist. I'm a naturalist. I take things as they are, right? And I deal with the reality of how human beings are. Nobody's perfect. There are no perfect conditions. There is no perfect man. There is no ideal man. There's no, you know, ideal look or standard of aesthetics. There's no ideal, but you have to fit an ideal that's created, and 9 times out of 10, these ideals are created by marketers, you know, by you know, public relations experts who are trying to sell products. And then, you know, and these ideals get filtered down into the mass public, and then people they act like this is something that they need, as opposed to something that is just it's unrealistic. There is no perfect person out there. And if you want somebody who's making a lot of cash, especially a black man, either he's going to be one of those handpicked black men working in corporate America, or working in the academy, or who's in the sports or entertainment industry, right? Or you're going to meet a regular brother, man, who's making $30,000 a year. Those are just the facts. You know what I'm saying? I mean, those are the numbers, man. The vast majority.
You know, my ex long time ago, man, she told me, she asked me that question about, you know, that scenario about a man coming home and finding his wife in the bed with another man. And she asked me, okay, what would you do if I walked in on her and it happened saw a man in the bed with her. She said, "What would you do?" I said, "I would leave him the keys to the house and the bills."
just coolly walk over with a stack of envelopes and be like, "Here you go, sir. These are
Here
the
you go,
bills.
sir. These are the bills. Yeah.
Here are
And
the
these are
keys.
they need to be paid. Here are the keys. Yeah. And the children need to be picked up from school in about an hour or two. All right.
And look, I've never like so.
Was that too black? Was that too black pill? I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, it's in a sense it's true though, because look, I had a show about this, and a lot of people, got upset about it and started to say some real condescending things about it.
Mhm.
But
What's new on YouTube?
you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have perfect, ideal conditions for yourself. That just doesn't exist.
Mhm.
So like I want a man who's packing, bringing it, mandingo in it. He got to be making 100,000. He got to be 6 feet and look like Boris Kajot. Where you gonna find that at?
Well,
and when you find it, it's only like a small amount of men who have those qualities and characteristics all the time.
And you can get it.
And can you pay for a Boris Kajot? Because he's not going to be cheap.
And then when those guys get women, the women still aren't satisfied. I talked about because you got your high octanes, right? BGS, and that even applies to men as well, right? So you got Emmett Smith, Michael Jordan,
right?
Dr. Dre, Luther Campbell, Tiger Woods. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. You got these men who are like the top earners, like men who you can't be like. You imagine yourself with the football being like Emmitt Smith doing the things that he did on the gridiron. You imagine yourself being able to speak articulately as he does on the broadcast. That he does for whatever sport shows he commentates. You imagine yourself being able to do the kind of things that he does, and he does them well. And the woman that he's associated with still doesn't appreciate it, and complains about not having enough time. And her needs not being met.
Okay, finish your statement.
I'm done with it, bro. Yeah, I'm done.
No. Because I wanted to compliment what you're saying and expand it, because it wasn't even like we talk about this episode and this gentleman here. It wasn't even limited to his wife, who did. I mean, even Ayanla established she was using him for his money because she had shut down all affections years ago, and she openly stated she was only staying around for the money. But his own daughter, man. Yes. And his own daughters. I mean, there was a point where what'd you say?
I said she poisoned the seeds.
Well, yeah, right. That could definitely be argued. But the point I was going to bring up is there was a point in the episode when they were interviewing his youngest daughter, and his youngest daughter pointed out that she had been raped. And she didn't say by who, but she implied it was somebody, that they all knew. And she said, I couldn't tell my father because my father's crazy. And so the immediate perception that, they had Steve Perry on there as well as Ayanla. And the approach they took was, now see what you did? You're so unstable that your kids can't come to you and tell you things.
Wow. She misinterpreted it that much, huh?
That's not even a misinterpretation. That's just flat out blaming the man.
A flat lie. Yeah.
Flat out lie. Just blaming him for what befell his damn daughter. That's
no. In other words, what she was saying, and what all black people know, when she said my daddy's crazy. In other words, my daddy find out that man will not be breathing anymore. She didn't want that.
Which is what's supposed to happen.
Exactly.
Now there's a relationship between that story and the other topic for tonight. We're looking at Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which just came out a few days ago on Netflix. Shout out to Chadwick Boseman.
Hell of a performance.
Hell of a performance. Did a beautiful job. And I mean, he and Viola Davis killed it. They did beautiful work as far as acting is concerned. The story is powerful. August Wilson. Now, there is a connection, like I said, to this father's story in Ayanla, but we'll get there in a minute. But before we do, I just want to say, to every brother on the panel here, please support their channel. Go to Green Gorilla's channel. Check out BGS Ibmore if you haven't. I don't know what rock you've been sleeping under. And Brother Artisan mainly puts out content on Sundays. So definitely be aware of that. Follow that. These brothers are brilliant. So check them out and support them.
Shop talk.
Shop talk. Yeah, absolutely.
Copy by white geeks all over the YouTube.
Exactly.
There it is.
Oh man, you also got to give a shameless plug for the crowdfunding campaign, man, for the documentary.
Yeah.
Well, can you tell us anything about that? What could you tell us?
What's the title of it? What's it about?
It's called The White People of Black People, which is what we've been called. We're the white people of black people, and so we already know that the research is not looked upon as substantive and objective and impartial research. People frown on it, but I feel like black men have to begin to speak up. They have to say something about themselves on their own terms and about their experiences. And so here's a chance for us to put together a document, through the media that people can look at, that's professional, that would encapsulate all of our ideals. And it's necessary, I think. And the crowdfunding campaign is going to begin at the new year, 1/1/21. So that's when it starts. So Indiegogo, the white people of black people. It's already in pre-launch mode, but it'll be launched on the 1st. So then, all we need is 10,000 brothers to give $5, 5,000 brothers to give $10.
Oh.
1,000 brothers to give $50. Well, sisters too. You know what I'm saying? We need this work. We need it out there. And so let's get it done. We got to get that done.
Absolutely. So support, y'all. Check it out, because we're going to be getting a documentary in, and it's going to be fire.
Yeah, the trailer's powerful.
Check out the trailer. You can find it on Green Gorilla's channel, on BGS's. You can definitely find it on mine. Check it out and support. All right. This is important work. So, my Rainey's Black Bottom. If we could just generally summarize real quick what this is about before we jump in. Right. So this is a play by August Wilson. Somebody want to jump in and kind of describe what this is?
On our own terms?
Just general terms for right now. BGS, what would you say?
This is not quite self-made, but it's close. Okay. But it's really describing even though this is a blues singer talking about the 20s, but the interaction between black women and white men, and black men being in between those two poles, was actually what struck me, because the band was between the strong personality of the matriarch, which is Ma Rainey, the blues singer who was famous, and then the white people, the white producers that wanted to make money off of her.
And this is a couple of years before the Great Depression, right? And this is we're looking at, basically it really did come across more like a play than I was expecting, which is fine. Which it
was a play, yeah.
Which it was, right. I wasn't upset about that. I was just a little taken aback because I was expecting, Netflix, to do something a little more theatrical, but I wasn't upset. I wasn't upset in the slightest. But it was basically a day in the life of this band trying to record a song. And they kind of pull from, of course, history, the real life of Ma Rainey. They pull from, the recording she did at Paramount, the records and whatnot. But there are all kinds of other themes that August Wilson brings into this that cover that run the gamut of issues regarding race, regarding gender, regarding power, regarding exploitation, and a number of these things. And so, here you have Viola Davis playing Ma Rainey. You also have, as we said, Chadwick Boseman playing the character of Levy, who is a horn player, right? Let me see if I can get this on the screen. This might be that's the wrong one. Here we go. All right, so Chadwick Boseman is playing Levy, and I'll put up the whole cast. They had an excellent cast.
They did.
They had an excellent cast. I know these pictures aren't going to be the easiest to see, but Coleman Domingo I really like. Let me see. You can get a better picture of him. Coleman Domingo played in Birth of a Nation. He played the character who was married to oh my goodness, what is the sister name in real life? Chocolate Sister. She played the mute who was raped. Oh my goodness, she's married to an NBA player. How do I forget her name? Gabrielle Union. There you go. So he played the character married to her who helped start off the revolution with Nat Turner. And then you have Glenn Turman, and anybody that's familiar with A Different World, or even earlier than that, of course, in the 70s. What's the major flick we all know him from?
Coolie High.
Coolie High. Yes,
Coolie
Glenn
High.
Turman played in this beautiful work as usual. He did a brilliant job. So they had some powerful people in this, and this was actually co-written. So this is obviously written by August Wilson, but it was adapted. It was the screenplay was written by a brother who wrote Lackawanna Blues. His name, hold on, I have him right up here. I really like his work, and if you haven't seen Lackawanna Blues, definitely check that out. Oh man, here we go. His name always escapes me. Oh, there he goes. Ruben Santiago Hudson. He did the screenplay. Ruben is a brilliant actor, and you've seen him in a million things. You just may not have known his name. But there he is right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I've seen him. Yeah.
Yeah, so he did the screenplay for this and adapted it. And of course, this is all under the thumb of Denzel Washington putting this together. And so it's really, a similar camp that brought you Fences. And so, and under August Wilson, there are definitely some consistent themes there. So just kind of starting off with that, impressions about the film, and I'll just leave it open to y'all.
Well, I really liked the film, and like you said, initially I thought it was going to be this big sweeping story, and they were going to move around and whatnot. And then once they got into it, I realized they're one location, and this kind of ensemble cast is there giving their performances. I really got into it because it did put me in that mind state of I'm watching a play. This is a stage play. Right. And I like that because you get more into the characters, because the characters will tell you who they are through dialogue, but it's not staged in a way. They just start revealing more about themselves and draw you more into the actual story of what's going on with them, so you understand what's happening in this whole collage of stuff that's going on in this one scene. So that's what really got me, because I like getting to know each character like that, and then revealing things about themselves that make you get to the scene and get the impression like, okay, we may not know where he's going. I liked him a minute ago, but now, right now, I don't know. I don't know where the brother going. Right. Because it's all for the games until somebody start, mentoring the white man.
Yeah. Which is kind of standard for August Wilson. Like if you've seen, the piano lesson, 1 minute you like somebody and then they keep talking, you be like, damn, I hate that cat. And then you might love them again by the end of the damn play.
They're all. The thing is other than the white man, they're all tragic figures in a sense. Yes. There are no heroes. There are no. There's no triumph. Even at the very end, they're all tragic figures. That they're all smashed into this into this one stressful session.
So let's. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, well, maybe we can tease out some of the main tensions that popped out, in terms of the different characters. What were some of the ones that stood out for you guys?
Well, number one, the characters that were vying for power and attention were Livy, who's a young man, and the old matriarch, which is Rainey, who's going to control these group of people,
right?
Even down to the young lady that they were vying for, control over her. So this is go ahead.
No, I was just going to back up what you were saying, just to give and I shouldn't have to say spoilers. It always blows me away. People get mad. Yeah, I'm like the whole look. I don't look. If you coming into the video, you should know there's going to be spoilers. So, right, you would think, but okay, so this is, you know, all dealing with Ma Rainey, and they're trying to, you know, record, and, you know, each one of them is under a certain type of pressure unto themselves. Ma Rainey, one of the pressures she's dealing with is she knows that this white record company is appropriating her voice, and she talks about how as soon as she's done recording, they don't need her anymore.
Right.
And this is at a time period where Bessie Smith who's really kind of an acolyte of hers, is on the rise. She, you know, the sound is changing, which is what Chadwick Boseman's character Levy represents. The new sound is changing of the blues. And so she's kind of trying to, you know, reconcile this space where she knows she's transitioning out in a certain way, but she wants to make sure that she has some dignity in how this is managed, and she doesn't want to be at the whim of, you know, these corporate dudes. But Levy, on the other hand, has a different set of tensions. He's looking at trying to build his career. He's trying to start his band and go his own way and establish his own sound. And for the moment, he's trying to do this in someone else's band.
Yes.
In Ma Rainey's band. And so that's one of the tensions. And Domingo here plays, I think is it Listo? What's his name?
Cutler.
Thank you. Cutler. And Cutler is really, you know, he's kind of Ma Rainey's not the manager, but the manager of the band for Ma Rainey.
Her band leader.
He's the band leader, right? And band leader is not just in terms of the music, but in terms of keeping everybody on point and doing what they need to do. So you kind of have those kind of tensions bared out there. And as BGS pointed out, there's also a young lady, because Ma Rainey was bi. Damn, that's a cool picture of Chadwick. Go ahead, man. You know, but she's Ma Rainey is bi, and so she has a woman that she brings with her. That is that there we go.
There you go.
So she brings this woman with her to the studio, who is also attracted to Levy. So you have some competition between Ma Rainey and Levy on a couple of different levels, the music as well as this woman. Right. What are some of the other tensions we can draw out and just put on the table so people at least know where we're starting from?
And you know, and then, you know, the like I said, then there's always the overarching white so-called patriarchy, you know, trying to extract as much as they can from these people, as they can, even with having Levy write music for them.
Oh, don't even talk about that. That's
and then, you know, as soon as he gives them the sheet music, I said, man, you just signed it over.
You just gave it away.
Yeah,
you just gave it away.
Yeah, so, you know, talking about spoilers, so, you know, to me the tension is white exploitation and how it creates tensions amongst black people.
Yes.
Even to the extent to which it can lead to death amongst black people. I think that you know, if I don't know if people have seen this, but to me that's what, you know, August Wilson is trying to bear out here, because you know, everybody's getting along for the most part until Levy is, you know, told that he can't perform his music for these white producers or the, you know, white label execs. And it creates even more tension amongst these men, which is already existing because they exist within, you know, a poverty. And, you know, Levy is the young guy who's trying to demonstrate his worth, not only by means of his talent and skills, but also by means of material consumption. So that, you know, that's what the shoes represent.
Right. The beginning starts with him buying these shoes. You can see in the photo that he won the money from in a I think it was a dice game with Cutler.
Dice game.
Yeah.
You know, so he starts off coming in with these new shoes, and it's interesting, you know, what the shoes mean, especially when you bookend it with the 1990s and Nike Jordans and whatnot. You know, the idea of what shoes mean to black men, and for August Wilson to kind of, you know, foreshadow that, you know, so long ago, it has to do with dignity. It has to do with a certain degree of both of, I'd say, a mixture of status and dignity.
You know, back then, since shoes were good shoes are so hard to come by, you can, you know, well, even today, you know, you can measure a man's wealth by his shoes. Back then, that was, you know, in other words, you could have on the plain clothes, but if you look down at his feet, then you can measure his wealth, because a good pair of shoes expensive shoes are actually hard to come by. So, And black men have really basically stuck to that. Even our women judge us by what? First, shoes.
Yeah. Which actually plays out, not necessarily directly about the shoes, but when Levy is trying to seduce Ma Rainey's girlfriend, right? One of the things he does to seduce her is talk about what he's going to have, what he's going to do in the future. You know, the band he's going to have, how famous they're going to be, what they're going to, and it works.
Yeah.
It is a huge, that was his game. It was all on what he's going to do.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. Okay, why what happened, but it only happened after she couldn't get her way with Ma Rainey.
Yeah,
and plus, this was an act of rebellion, and he took advantage of it. Well, I don't even think he even knew.
He didn't know about it. He ended up being in the right situation at the right time. Because he was going any other time. If that situation with Ma Rainey wouldn't have happened, she still came down there. He still would have been trying to spit at her.
He was right. Yeah, he was
already decided that he was trying to get her. So
yeah, you know the funny thing about it is, you could tell a man wrote that, and it's particularly in that spot because he's like, okay, the woman didn't care whether it was another woman or if it was a man. All she cared about was the come up. That's that's
trying to get out there and show that butt.
Yeah, you could tell a man would write a character of a woman like that. You wouldn't see too many women write a character into a story like that.
And plus, she's already sexually attracted to him, and which Ma Rainey picks up on from the very beginning when he's actually playing his heart on stage, playing out front, and she looked at the reaction of her girl from then.
Yeah,
so
and took
the
the spotlight right back.
Yeah,
because Levy stepped on to play his horn. The spotlight was on him. She saw Levy looking at her woman, and immediately stepped up and took the spotlight back.
Right.
But go ahead.
But the tragic thing about the end of the story is, Levy kills the guy, and we don't know what the outcome is. In relation to the police, I can't recall that.
They
did
they
pick him up?
They went into that.
Yeah, but what we do know they went into was Levy's music was adopted by white men.
Not adopted.
Basically they took his songs and got rich off of them. That's the ultimate rub at the end. Like this man was denied the possibility of being able to flourish and to thrive given his talents, and it wasn't just. I get that it's Ma Rainey's band. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But nobody was open except for these white executives to the promise of him being able to perform his music on his own terms. So you had this young black man who feels like he's talented, gifted, and he wants to have an outlet to express himself.
Right.
But he's doing it within the context of a band where the woman, Ma Rainey, is her band. She's in control. Can't nobody tell her what to do with her band or how to play her music. She's not going to be open to anyone, being able to, adjust.
Especially a rival.
And look, all power to her, given that situation. I can understand that. I get it. But it's more cruel, though, to know that this man is on to something and he has great talent, and to deny him the capacity to be able to fulfill it, and then to sell the music to some white boys and have them perform it, and then it blows up, and then you take credit for it while this man is in a tragic situation, and all you had to do is just let the man play his music.
Yeah, that's the trap. You can actually see when he was telling the other band members about him writing music for Levy, they already knew. He wasn't going to listen because they were trying to tell him that you can't trust this white man with your music. That's what they're trying to tell him. But he thought because he's young and energetic, he thought that he was actually smarter than he was. And what they were saying to him, which is old wisdom, because I run into this all the time. What they're saying to him with old wisdom is that you don't know what you're talking about. I got this. I can control white men. I know what I'm doing.
Well, there's a couple things there. Like in terms of the tensions, there's an age tension that I was going to bring up, and you just hit on it, right? With Levy being the young man, and Levy was one of a couple of young men there. He wasn't the only one. Because there was another young man that had a whole different kind of tension. But Levy represents young ambition for a young black male.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with these older men in the band that have been there and done that.
Right.
And so he's but see what he's building on is that talent is really what's going to put him apart. Talent is going to differentiate him from other black men, especially the older black men in the band.
Yeah,
and he finds out the limitations of talent.
Yeah, in other words, he figures that they weren't enough and they weren't good enough, so that's why they failed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is youth. You know, you hear it all the time because we hear it with the millennials. You fail because this and that and other. Thing is that's the push of youth because you haven't been through it.
All right. There's a systemic edge to this that plays out very differently that takes experience to deal with. But I wanted us to get on Levy's story, the story he tells, because I think in many ways that's going to be what's remembered. And I really do hope that Bozeman wins, a posthumous award for that because it was brilliant.
It was.
His performance of it was brilliant. Go ahead, Artisan. Were you going to say something?
No, I was saying he could win for that because Levy's story was. It could be unsettling if you hadn't heard stories like that before from people from slavery and stuff like that. It was but I do respect how his father handled it. I'm upset that his father, got killed. Since we're doing spoilers, I'm upset that his father got killed doing that. But he was handling it the right way. He just slipped up somewhere. He should have had a son there backing his ass up or something. I don't know.
Well, tell us the story. What's the
Lev's story is that, and Dr. T got me doing this. I hate spoiling shit for people because I want them to watch stuff. But Lev's story is that his father was a sharecropper, and his father ended up, getting his freedom and buying the land that he worked on from old master's wife. And he had 50 acres of land, and it should grow anything on. And his father worked that land. And one day, while his father was gone getting some other stuff, these white men showed up, 8 or 9 white men showed up and raped his mother in the kitchen while he was there. And Levy was 8 years old when it happened. He saw it happen. And he didn't really know what was going on, but he grabbed his father's hunting knife and stabbed one of the men. And one of the men ended up, taking the knife from him and slashing his chest. So he saw who he was, and they left. The father came back, found out what happened, and the father just announces to everybody, the family and everybody in the town, that they're moving. They sell off all the land and stuff like that, and the father sells the land to one of the dudes that was raping his wife, right?
Yeah. And they only stopped because they thought Levy was going to bleed to death. That was the only reason.
I skipped that part. Levy got help, but it took him a while to get help. They stopped. His mother had to actually take him 2 miles away to somebody to try to help him, and they wouldn't help him. Then she had to go to a midwife to try to help him and bandaged him up so he could survive, right? So he survives. His father sells off the land, smiling and grinning and selling his land to one of the very men who raped his wife. They leave. They get all settled in with some cousins up north, and the father leaves one day and never comes back. Well, what the father does is the father goes back down south and kills 4 of them 8 men that raped his wife.
Yes.
But he ended up getting caught and getting killed himself.
Lynched, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the lesson that Levy learned from that was that you can smile at these white folks all damn day, but you need to get your get back. You can smile at them all day, but you need to get your get back some kind of way. But Levy kind of fumbles that part because he falls on that, what BGS was talking about. He falls on that youth. He didn't have the experience to know how to get them back. And he took it out in the wrong damn way. When the opportunity came, he went the other way. He worked with people he was more comfortable with cussing out than actually dealing with the person who actually messed with him. That was the part that made me hate his ass. It's like, come on, man, I was riding with you this whole time. And went and did some dumb stuff.
But I think that's the genius of the play, even though I don't like it because I'm just going to say this, man. I'm just tired of stories where you see black men doing pernicious acts You know, and you know, because black men don't all deal with their problems in the same way. It's not like all black men go out and kill each other, predicated upon the
no, that was actually more accurate.
but the deal is, you know, it just goes to show you that Levy, what he actually did was, instead of, you know, taking that rage and pushing it outward towards white people, he took that rage and he pushed it towards other black people.
Inward.
And I think that does happen and occur quite often in this culture.
All the time.
I mean, you see black women do it to black men. Black men might be doing it to black women. You see black men doing it to each other. You see black women doing it to each other. Instead of externalizing the tensions that we have, and you know, and predicated upon the systemic injustices that we suffer from, we act like we're the only people that we are actually capable of releasing the frustration on is ourselves, and that's just a deleterious act. It's not productive, you know, and it's a step in the wrong direction. But you hurt people.
Well, that's our dysfunction, and I said that as far as, I think that we were on a panel one time, and then a young lady said we were actually talking about black women and discussing black women, and she said that's how black men show self-hatred. And I said, no, black men show self-hatred by attacking themselves, attacking each other. They don't, and that's exactly what happened in this story. When basically he got fooled by the white man, he was powerless to do anything about it. What did he do? Did he take it out on the white man or somebody else? No, he took it out on another black man, which is what we do all too often, when not necessarily in violence, you know, where you're killing each other, but we take out our self-hatred on saying that, talked about Chicago and how Chicago has this murder rate, and taking that out on the thugs who are killing each other, and taking out no good Negroes that need to be put in prison and stuff like that. And so that self-hatred that we exhibit inside ourselves, this is how it spills out. You know, women plead to white men to be accepted. They change their hair. They try to change their skin color. They try to go have light-skinned babies. Okay? That's how they embody their self-hatred. We do it in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And you know, this is a play that was written in 1984, which I find interesting, because when we talk about the end, right, where Levy kills Toledo, the older man, and that's an interesting dynamic too. I think he's the oldest man there.
He is.
I think there's something there we got to look at. But you have him killing the oldest man there for scuffing his shoes, which is real interesting thing, because this is written at a time just a few years before we actually begin to hear more of those stories in the 80s and 90s, as far as, you know,
the right thing.
Yeah,
that's where that's where you heard about him. I was hearing that in the 60s and 70s. Okay, by stepping on the man's shoes.
But you know,
many fights and many stabbings went down over stepping on the man's shoes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it did.
You know, hey, man, and the funny thing about it is, you know, even in real life, you see white men eventually appropriating the material and the culture of black people. You know, I remember, you know, Elvis had a song called "Don't Step on My Blue Suede Shoes." And the funny thing about it is, we now know that, like, there's a black man that wrote most of Elvis's music and did demos
and
for
black
his music.
women.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And you know, this shoe thing, man, like, and again, it's all based on status. It's consumer dandyism. That's what I call it. And you know, to demonstrate fitness through market, or purchasing power. And unfortunately, this is the measure of a man in our culture. You know, like, do you have purchasing power? And and it's supposed to demonstrate that you have access to resources. And it belies the fact that black people are in trouble as a whole, man. But you know, but black men also have a chip on their shoulders to some degree. You know, with each other, it's like a mistrust. A little bit, you know, like a danger that, you know, exists amongst all men. I mean, it really doesn't matter, but it's heightened, and the tensions are exacerbated by the racism and by the denial to be able to move out of poverty or to actualize your dreams. This, and then when you see another man actually be able to perform the miracle of, fulfilling his dreams or being able to, escape the clutches of the systemic, caste system, or if you want to call it a class system, then you see the hate. We got words for this right now, man. Haters, I don't know what they calling it now, ops,
But what's interesting about it is usually when you delve into Black life deep enough, even those that seem like they're breaking through are usually hampered in another way. But you're still on point with it, Gigi, because the tensions are such that we'll take it out on those who seem like they're doing better. And and usually it's in hindsight that you find out they're still dealing with the same situation. I mean, most of Black America is dealing with a number of different issues, but one of the most pertinent has been being barred from being able to develop any kind of wealth. And we're in almost every Black story you hear about starts with that, and that includes this one. Each of these, I mean, for the most part, many of these characters are coming out of the South. They're coming out of an experience of severe poverty, right? And trying to find a way to transition out of that with some degree of dignity, and yet they're still being pulled back to that same issue over and over. I mean, even Ma Rainey, as wealthy as she was at that particular time, she couldn't stay at a white hotel downtown. You know what I mean? She could talk back to a police officer to some extent. We need to get into that. But there were still limitations that have to do with Black reality. So that's still prevalent. But there's a moment where Levy gets into an argument with Cutler, and they're talking about God.
Oh wow, that was a great one.
Yeah. And so this fight over Cutler's God. Does anybody want to go into that?
Yeah, I'll go into it since I hear people talk about God and religion all the time. They talk about how religion is the opiate of the masses, born from Marx, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be, because white people have used Christianity to dominate the world. So I mean, you can't just necessarily say that Christianity, in and of itself, per se, is a religion that makes you submissive, although it can lead to those tendencies. But I mean, related to seeing his mother get raped.
Yes.
Related to seeing his father try to avenge her rape and to get killed and murdered. So he's left with wounded parents or a killed parent. And these probably were some people who were religious, especially coming from the rural South. And to have to deal or contend with those kind of issues. And then, his mother, one of the things that he remembers that she said was, "Lord, please help me. Please save me. Don't let this happen to me. Lord, have mercy. Please have mercy on me, Lord." And then, it's I think it might have been August Wilson's, way to kind of discuss the absurdity of faith. On the one hand, this kind of faith can keep you going amidst horrible conditions. But at the same time, it can leave you open to manipulation and to, offer up no resistance whatsoever in the face of oppression and domination. So then the question becomes, some people also, though, they throw faith in your face. And Black people have a real big problem with doing this. Like, you need to pray. If you don't pray, you ain't getting your blessings because you ain't praying. And so it distracts and it takes away from Black people being able to actually comprehend the external forces that people are enacting upon them. Not some sort of cosmic justice that God is, punishing people because they're not devout enough. No, it's some real systemic earthly material things going on. And, I think that, his acknowledgement of that is powerful, man, in the context of this story.
But that's what actually triggers him. Exactly what you described, right? Because it was an argument with Cutler, and Cutler begins to tell him, "You going to hell."
Oh, that you don't tell, especially oh my God, you don't tell a Black man who saw his mother raped, His father killed for trying to avenge his mother's death.
Yeah.
And so, that's it's a lot going on there, man. And the old man, it just goes to show you the difference in morality too, as you begin to move from the rural South and you get a young generation of people who are moving to the North and what kind of value systems that they hold. Because, black people are spiritual people, but they become secular in the course of like 60 years. That's done, man. Now get your booty to the pole. You know what I'm saying? They got that WAP now.
God,
You wouldn't hear that, man. In the 30s, you wouldn't hear women talk. Well, you would hear it. I take that back because that's what black bottom is. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing, man. Because black people love they love their earthiness, and at the same time they love their wholesomeness, and these contradictions about us, man. They exist within us, but that's who we are, man. We're messy. We're not like, we're not perfect, rational people. It just underscores my metaphysics of the person, man.
That damage shows up, and this is what this actually exemplifies. That this damage didn't just there was no Andy and Mayberry back in the in after emancipation. There was no golden age for black people in this country, even though we keep getting it heaped upon us like, the civil rights took us out of our golden age and we're much more together, and we didn't have any dysfunction, and that's simply not true.
Well, and I think one of the things when you look at Levy and his frustration with being told he's going to hell, he raises a critical question. He said, well, he basically challenges God to step in and do something. Especially considering how much he hadn't seen that possible, or hadn't seen that happen. But I think August Wilson is playing with some nuance there, because even though his mother is praying, Levy does survive. Even though Levy threatens Cutler's life with a knife and says, if you're God, step in and keep me from killing him. He doesn't kill him. He actually kills somebody else. So I think Wilson is playing with something there where it's like, okay, you do have this kind of pushback against religiosity in a way, but at the same time, there's still something there, because the things that he challenges God about actually don't happen. And first and foremost being his own survival. He survived being slashed at a young age by this grown man. His father didn't. It's fun, but anyway, so there's some interesting themes there that I think play out.
It's just a dope, because it's an existential question, man. Like why black people made to suffer in the ways that they're made to suffer.
Right.
It's
that's why he said in the piece, God don't love niggas.
Right. Yeah, that was powerful.
And look, I'm pretty sure. I can't speak to all of the people out there, man, but people sometimes they get mad at God. Like, why me? Why do I have to suffer this? Why do I have to go through this? Why are we having to contend with these kind of issues? And there's some people, who maintain their faith, and it's almost like a kind of, a docility, a kind of way of naiveness, so to speak, by which you don't have to really actually contend with the reality of what you're going through. And but this has been the issue, man, time immemorial. Even going back to ancient times, like is this world real? Is there another world that's more real than this one, ontologically, metaphysically? And what do you do when you're subjected to absurdity and injustice? Like, how do you respond to it? And do you scoff at God? Do you rebuke God? And what's the end result of that? I don't know if what Levy, because Levy does curse God. And so it could be very well that August Wilson is playing upon the dangers associated with just
that anger, because what Levy says is that to Cutler, when he's cutting, he said, my mother was praying to God while she's being raped by this white man.
Yeah, that was the point I was gonna make. Is that he's really, I'm seeing Levy in that scene. I just remember I remember Boys in the Hood and Doughboy having that same conversation, and just how it resonates with the amount of trauma or dysfunction or just bad stuff that we see in the world as Black people. It seems almost rational to question about religion and God or whatever, because you can't see stuff like that and just think that, well, yeah, there is a God still, and he's looking out for us, because that 2-year-old boy being left at the damn Goodwill like he's a bag of old clothes.
Wow.
Come on, man.
Wow. Yeah.
You have to ask the question. The question has to be asked. You can be mad. Anybody can be mad about it if you want to, but look, there's certain stuff you just can't deny.
So will that boy be Levy?
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
I thought that when you read that story, I thought that who will this kid become later on?
Yes.
Who will he become?
It's who was that? I'm trying to remember. He actually married Gladys Knight. He was a public speaker. His mother
Les Brown.
Les Brown was abandoned by his mother on a cold floor in a shack. Okay, so this man, he could be Levy or he could be Les Brown, depending on who actually raises him after this.
But it's also a testament to, like if you're willing to say, I'm not going to use pejorative terms on your channel, but like to say F God. If you say F God, man, there ain't no limit to what you do to another man.
True. That is true.
I'm just keeping it 100. Like, I mean, like if you say that there is no order, there is no higher power, there is nothing, that stands between you and, moral, reasoning or moral, rules, as it pertains to engaging other human beings, then, if you have no belief in a higher power whatsoever, you can give excuse for yourself to do some pretty heinous things to other people, even out of anger. So,
and you're absolutely right. What I wanted to attach this to is a particular experience for Black men, because when I heard Levy's story about his father, most particularly, right, his father dying in the act of killing the men that raped his wife. I couldn't help but associate it with the brother in Iyanla Van Zant's show. And his daughter being afraid to tell him who raped her, because she worried that he would go to jail, over responding. And the challenge of Black men to try and have some dignity. And what I saw in that dynamic, at least as far as my, most immediate visceral feeling and response, was that you had this narrative where Black women and children felt the need to protect their fathers by not telling them things, right? But undergirding all of that was this idea that you're really only a good Black man if you can take that information, do something about it, and not get caught. And what I mean by that is, when I think of Birth of a Nation, right, I think of Nat Turner, even the film. I mean, I was thinking of Nat Turner as a historical figure, and in terms of the film, Birth of a Nation. In that film, he stages a revolt, but he gets caught. You know what I mean? There's something about this narrative for Black men getting caught. But if you can rebel, you can take white folks out who've done you wrong and survive. I mean, even at the beginning of Birth of a Nation, the reason Nat never sees his father again is his father steals food for his son, but has to leave and never come back again. And we don't know if he gets killed on the road. We don't know what else happens. There's this idea of Black men and failure, especially at the hands of the state or the authorities or the corporations, like with Paramount. But there's something there about Black men and failure. And so this idea that you're not fully received as a man, even within your own family, unless you're able to exact that kind of justice and get away with it. And that to me was the tying fiber between the brother in Iyanla and Levy's story. The daughter didn't think her father would not get caught. You know what I mean? Levy's father gets caught. There's something about failure and Black men that's tied together in that sense. And our manhood is measured based on how much we can accomplish all these standards of masculinity and not get caught. Can you provide? Can you protect? Can you exact justice against those who've done your family wrong and not end up lynched your damn self? And if you can't, you're not fully a man in the eyes of the people that are around you. That's what I grapple with when I see these kind of narratives.
I see.
Well, that's the whole equation right there. Like, that's why a lot of black women, like I had some woman come into my show and she was like, well, y'all weak. Y'all are conquered. I cursed her out. I told her, get the, I don't know where you're going, but you're going to get the hell out of here. But
get out of my comments, yeah. But see, Taylor in the comment section has got it right. He says Superfly got away. That's actually the narratives that we wanted to see more because we were tired of seeing black male failure. We were tired of just seeing constant stories back and over again about failure. There were successes. There were slave ships where the enslaved broke out from the bowels of the ship, killed the whites that had them, and took the ships back. We haven't seen no movies on it. Well, Amistad, they still make it. They make it to the U.S. But there were stories where they successfully turned the ships back around to Africa, but we don't see those films. There are stories about uprisings on plantations where they do kill the landowners, the slave owners, and then go into maroon communities. There are success stories. There are black men today who are protecting, providing for families, and doing so successccessfully. But those aren't the stories we see. But they happen.
Yeah, but hey man, them people that got an interest in not telling those stories because it doesn't fit into their political agenda, man.
No,
but are they told in the black family even? I'm curious.
Not in what family?
There we go.
You know what I'm saying? Like what family? Like I said this a long time ago, bro. Look. I said it. I got a show called "What Black Women Could Learn from the Daughters of Confederacy." Go check it out. Damn. And it's crazy because a lot of black men fought in the Union, man, during the Civil War, and all these white women, erected these monuments for these Confederate soldiers, and they lost. And then I'm like, well, where are all the structures for black men, man, who died and who risked their lives and who fought for the freedom of black people, and there's no honor. All there is you're a failure. You're a failure. Yes. You ain't nothing.
They put a Harriet Tubman statue up instead.
Oh, and it's like, hold on, wait a minute. You mean I don't know any of these stories, and it's the women really who's supposed to be teaching these stories because, this goes back to the Osirian or the Memphite theology.
Okay.
When Osiris is killed by his brother, it's his wife that laments after him and who pieces him back together.
Yes.
And makes him whole again.
Yes.
But you don't. Now this might sound bad, to black women, but it's like, where y'all at? Like, I mean, the power of a nation does reside in its women. It does to a certain extent because they teach young men, and they give the earliest teachers at the most formative ages. They're supposed to be the ma'at. They're supposed to be all set in ma'at. But what happens when the women are Heru or imagine themselves to be Heru
instead of being Isis, right?
You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, okay, you're gonna be Heru, okay? All right, let's see how that works. Let's see how long it works, because we know every black man knows, woman, what you gonna do to these white dudes if something really pop off? What are you gonna do? You gonna twerk? You gonna twerk in front of them?
Twerk exactly.
You gonna hold a sign in front of them? Yeah. But we gotta be realistic. But see, we're not being realistic. We're not naturalistic. We're using civil rights tropism. We're using ideas related to feminism, which I don't have a problem with women being able to get their shine on and to some degree, but if it's managed and forced and directed and controlled by white folks, man, it ain't real, man. It ain't real, man. You know what I'm saying?
But that, I think, is what takes us back to the core question, because when I look at, again, I'm gonna put him back on the screen. When I look at this brother here, what I see happening, if we put it back in the context of what you were talking about, Memphite theology, he was actually in a way assassinated while alive.
Character assassination.
He's standing right there and being negated while sacrificing for his family. The whole show was about how much ire everybody had for him. But even in the instant where his daughter refrains from telling him about being raped, he's assassinated there. There's no memory. There's no acknowledgement. Even though whatever he might have done would have been in her protection, you know, it wasn't seen as a strength of his. It was seen as his own incapacity to stay reasoned.
Yeah.
And thus he becomes a problem for his own family.
But look, man, all I can tell you is, man, you know, these white folks, man, I can't say all of them are like that, man, but they've created the conditions, man, where it is perfectly acceptable, quite normal, to divide us, man. Like they've created the perfect ideology that accounts for the disrespect of black men in the home. And look, all of this stuff rolls downhill, man, to us. Like it impacts and affects our lives more than it does their lives. And you speak about this, like if a woman disrespects a white guy, he can start over 2 or 3 times. But how many times can a black man start over, man? With a family, and to have to deal with, the rigors of culture that we live in already, and then on top of that, got to deal with, something exacerbated by a failed relationship with a woman, and then the woman using all the powers related to the state in order to make what she considers to be justice, pour down on the heads of the very men that, she's supposed to be uplifting and building with. It's like, man, we caught into catch-22s, man. We, I don't have all the answers myself, but we ain't doing something right. We better figure it out.
Well, I can tell you, going back to the remembrance of us, Asar, as you brought up, Osiris, that when we look at who's being remembered, there's one angle I want y'all to think about. Remember Queen Latifah's film Bessie?
Yes.
The film she did on Bessie Smith?
Yeah.
Or what is it? What's her name? The one who did Self-Made. What's the name? I keep wanting to call her Octavia, but I can't remember her name.
Octavia Spencer.
Octavia Spencer, thank you. Or even this one with Viola Davis. One of the things we're seeing is this kind of adulation of black female power, right? One of the things you see in Ma Rainey is she bucks up against the police, right? She's telling the cops off, after this accident, and all these white men are standing around, and they don't do anything to her, and she's she kind of responding with attitude and all these other kinds of things. And so you see something similar happening in Bessie and in Self-Made. In fact, in Self-Made, she becomes a millionaire and lives right next door to, I think it was one of the Rockefellers. So there's this kind of narrative there that instead of remembering Asar, as you said earlier, Gigi, she becomes Heru. She becomes the remembrance. She becomes the example of black folk who aren't afraid of whites and who are able to conquer white supremacy by being able to play the game as well as any white person. This is the kind of narrative I see in some of these films that celebrate these kind of women in the past, and they're almost always bi. That's an interesting component to it me as well. I find that. From Self-Made to Bessie to this, they're bi. Man, so there's something about replacing black men. But go ahead.
For everybody.
but here's the deal, man, with this, right? Like, we already know, man. Like, so I read David Walker's appeal. On the show, on my show, just so people can have a record of it, because people, they say that Christianity is, definitely the opiate for black folks, right? And that it can never be used for revolutionary purposes amongst the black masses because it's a conciliatory religion. It's a slave religion, right? But he uses it as a catalyst, or as a clarion call,
right?
And as a a harbinger for revolution. But deeper than that, though, man, look, in that tale, or in his story, his narrative, his appeal, he tells the story of a group of slaves who were being transported from one spot to the next. And he talks about how the men were shackled, but the women were allowed to roam around freely with the children because they didn't fear anything from these women. Like, we have to understand this. Like we got to understand the reality. If there's going to be any threat, militarily, rebelliously, insurrectionist wise, it's going to happen through male agency. You got to understand that. But
they do.
But they call for it. But you have to also be involved in the process from the formative ages of the boys, man. You got to be involved in it. You can't expect for that to come out of a vacuum. This is
you can't have 100 years of data and history and not know that this is where it's stemming from. You actually bucked up against it when Moynihan actually pointed it out, over 50 years ago. You can't say that you don't know. You do. You're doing this intentionally, especially the black female intelligentsia. They're doing this on purpose. They know.
But that's butter biscuits, man. Like, look, yeah. I also read about an excerpt. I forget the name of the book where I got the excerpt from, but it was a conversation about how black women during the 60s, they wanted black men to take the lead. It's something that they, were in union with, or in agreement with.
Until they got what they wanted.
But now it's like, okay, well, we never said that y'all should be in the lead. We never agreed with that. The language was sexist because, even like Martin Luther King Jr. was like, you never let somebody take your manhood. And the language was all predicated around manliness, no room for womanhood. But, man, at the end of the day, man, look, this is how I see this. And I'm just going to be frank and honest about it. I don't care who gets mad about it. But, white women have been using black women as a proxy to wage war against their own men. And it's having death-dealing consequences for black men and boys, man. It's just, it is. And,
I got a term for that I can't use on the air. But
I mean, they're using it for a proxy war with their men. And because they look, it's not our job to pay for the sins of white men. We didn't do that. You know what I'm saying? That's not something that we did. Yeah. So, but we still get indicted for it.
Yeah, that's that flat maleness. We're all the same because we have penises.
They've always been afraid that if black men will get power, then they'd be subject to the same rules and restrictions that white women have been. In other words, instead of having one patriarch, for lack of a better term, you'll have two.
But they want the patriarchy. I mean, like they want the $100,000 dude. They want the high earning dude, and they want the strong dude. They don't even know what they want at this point.
They want $100,000 ConcuServe or $100,000 gynarch that will do what I tell them to do. That's what they want.
They want babyface.
As one woman I dated with a doctorate told me, your money is our money, my money is my money. But I want you to make 6 figures and up so that I don't have to work. So so even the adoration around high value men is really, is about that ConcuServe at the end of the day, but it's dressed in patriarchal language to give the idea that that's appreciated. But I've been arguing for a minute. We have a female patriarchy in the black community. She wants to be the patriarch.
Yes, she'll
give you the performance in word only, and only to a point until you've signed the contract, and then that's it. It's a wrap after that. But I do want. Go ahead, BJ.
Oh, even Yana Van Zant's piece, their last show. That's exactly what was happening. They wanted him to be the ConcuServe.
Be all things we want you to be, but not who you are.
Man, they want you to be Mr. Belvedere, man. They want you to make hella money, but still be Mr. Belvedere, man.
They want you to be worse than Mr. Belvedere. It's worse than that.
I'm just saying, come on, man. Like, we got to be realistic. Like, this whole, first of all, this whole idea of a man going off to work, woman staying at home, being supported, all that shit is predicated upon. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I started to get too comfortable. I started to act like we're having a conversation just amongst ourselves.
That wasn't even that wasn't egregious. That wasn't egregious.
but here's,
that wasn't Luther.
No. But here's the deal. All of this is predicated upon white polite society, man. Like black people didn't live like that in Africa, man, where men do one thing, like go to work, and then women stay at home. Women had their duties to perform just like men. You know, and women had a life outside of the home alongside other women. They went and they did women's stuff, and they sang songs, and they had their own organizations and institutions, and they had their own rituals, just like men did. You know what I'm saying? So, for some reason, you know, this society, man, it's taking its toll on us in many ways, man, and we are attacking each other. And I just find it funny that the same norms that you know, we get accused of, like trying to be like white, you know, like these women, they want a white man. Like, I mean, you know, they want the ability for a black man to behave and to perform like a white man in a culture that was not made for us.
Yeah,
at all. This wasn't designed for us to thrive and to function and to flourish in. And they know.
Yeah, go ahead. They want us to give them the ability to be function as a white woman. That's what they want. That's why I said the myth of white womanhood. It's not us. If they could get another group of men to actually give them the status of white woman, they would flow over there immediately, but they can't. They're stuck with us.
But do you know why?
Go ahead.
Because black women can't do nothing but produce NIGGAs, man.
Oh God!
I'm just being honest, man. They manufacture NIGGAs, man.
Damn, professor. Don't
read
man,
them come like on, that. Man. Let's get real about it, man. That's why there's a problem with that. Yeah. Because we black people can't be white people, man. We're not white. And our desire to function and to thrive is not our commitment to whiteness. It's a commitment to function and to thrive. It has nothing to do with whiteness. But the funny thing is, as they aspire for their corporate power, and as they aspire for their, you know, inclusion, they don't consider themselves to be behaving like white people. They consider themselves to be engaged in a magical process. But when we do it, it's inherently, you know, problematic. It's like, hold on, wait a minute, man. Wait a minute. Hold on for a second. You mean my desire to function, to thrive, to flourish, and to function fully as a man in this culture is problematic, but your desire to function and to thrive and to fit into this culture, that's magic.
Right. Ours is problematic and mimetic because we're really just trying to emulate white men. That's the critique.
Right.
When they emulate white women, that doesn't count.
But look, feminism is white women's attempt to imitate white men.
Yes.
Let's just get this out the way.
Yes.
But it's not just. But at the same time, those women have the same problems as. Well, let me just put it this way. White feminism, to me, in my mind, just how I see it, part of the way is so white women have always been trying to, you know, have had attention with white men because all men and women, there's a tension between them. If it's not balanced out, there's no ma'at, and there's no harmony. Okay, and one could argue white men, you know, could be a little, you know, dominating and non-cooperative in their own way, right? But the way I see it, man, white women know how all the wealth in this country was acquired. They know where it comes from. Because they were part of the process of acquiring it. Yeah. They were involved in it. So they just want part of the neoliberal goodies, man.
Yeah, they want the blood money. Yeah.
They want that. They want to have the blood money on their terms.
Yes.
Right.
And they don't want to have it spoon-fed and like they don't want to be given an allowance. They want their share of the blood money, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so now you have a situation in which white women said, "Hey, we can use these black women in order to help further advance our cause." Because, you know, we'll just say that, you know, all men are just the same. All men are like this. Even your men are like this. Right. And it's a perfect excuse to basically just issue shame and guilting tactics against men who been the most oppressed group of men, man. One could argue in the history of this planet, man.
But the only difference is that when the white women wanted jobs, they didn't take the jobs from white men. Who did they take the jobs from?
Black men.
Black men.
Black men.
Mm-hmm.
That's why white men are. That's why white women help black women, because white women are actually more worried, I would think, about the black men, because who's on their ass? It ain't the black women, it's the black men. Because if they lose power, who steps up into that void? It ain't gonna be the black women. It's gonna be the black men in some senses.
Yeah.
That's who they constantly trying to help keep back. That's why they got the black women doing the job for them to help keep them back, so they can try to gather the rest of the goodies and get their cut.
And then after they tamp down your boys and train your black men to be proper serfs, then they're gonna come in and claim them. Okay, we'll take them. Yeah,
just like they did before.
And this is the power of sexual vulnerability by white women, because from there, by claiming that black men are as much a threat to white women as they are to black women, they were able to, in one stroke, magically reconstruct themselves both as victims and a minority at the same time. Right? And thus, white men are a threat because they're naturally oppressive. Black men are a threat because they're sexually oppressive, and therefore all women are linked under the oppression of all men.
That's what, according to the Gucci boots, yes.
Don't step on my shoes, bro.
Step on the shoes.
Don't step on. Well, you can stick a stiletto in his head. That's permissible.
Well, let's do it this way. I want each of you, and I want to start. I'm going to start with Artisan, and I want to go to Gigi, and then BGS. What is a closing thought you had about Black Bottom? Something that stood out to you, something you want to kind of end the discussion with a reference to. What stuck out for you? I'll start with Artisan. Something else, something you want to close on.
Something I want to close on. I would say that if you're going to watch Black Bottom, which you should, since we're talking about it and spending this time about it, you should be at least interested to watch it. If you watch it, understand there's a lot going on in it, but what you see is an interplay between a matriarchy, young, ambitious black men, older black men who have been through stuff and actually lived through some of these lessons, and how white people for money will come in and disrupt that whole situation that you guys have with each other. That they can become a really divisive means into everything. There's nothing that played out in this story that you haven't seen before, because for me, Levy was ambitious and Ma Rainey had her thing, but Levy's beef wasn't really with Ma Rainey. Levy's beef was with trying to get his shot. And the people who put the battery in his back to get him really beefing with Ma Rainey about his shot was the record producers who was trying to get her to record the stuff, because he was the one telling them, yeah, I'll give you a shot. Just give me some music on the side. You can see this with anybody in the music industry right now. Ask NWA, ask Ice Cube how they got broken up, or how some one person on the outside comes in the middle of you guys and starts some beef and walks away with their hands clean and the bag of money. It's happening right now with this feminism stuff and all of that. So definitely watch the movie, but take your notes and extrapolate what you get out of that and superimpose it on the world that you see around you. It is a mirror. It's a mirror in a fictional sense.
All right, Gigi, any closing thoughts on Ma Rainey's Black Bottom?
Not so much Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but August Wilson. I want to say this. If you're a parent and your child has the opportunity to study August Wilson in high school, don't boycott it. Allow it to happen.
Facts.
Let it occur. I mean, because August Wilson is excellent in terms of being a playwright. And, he is worthy of being studied because he gets to the crux of the matter as it pertains to racism and the kind of conflicts that it creates between us. It could be any kind of division. It could be young, old, male, female, rich, poor. This systemic racial issue that hasn't never been contended with fully and never been reconciled within the context of this culture, man. It creates a bunch of animosity between us. And at least, you know, thought experiments can be played out within the context of his plays for black folks to understand that. Even you know, white folks can understand it more fully if they don't know. So, you know, just giving praises to August Wilson, man. And I love the language that he, you know, the realism instead of, you know, being respectable. That's one thing I love about it. So, yeah.
Can you point them to the video you did on the mother and son that you referenced just a second ago? I want people to hear your video on that. 'Cause that was powerful.
Man, well, you know, hey, this ain't, you know, I'll just say this. You know, the GG show is a little different than, you know, I'm going full tilt. So,
right.
But I'll definitely provide the link so that people, if they want to see it, they can see it. I'm doing that now. I'm going to my page and getting the link right now.
And y'all make sure you go through the comment section when he posts the link. It's a powerful video because there's he referenced something, but you got to hear the video to go into depth on it. So thank you. And Brother Master Teacher, if you want to comment on Black Bottom, and if there's any link to, because you did a recent video dealing with the Black matriarchy and football. Is there any linkage that you see between that and Black Bottom, or just your thoughts in general? But I wanted to shout that video out. You've been dropping heat, you know, lately, especially for a minute. Like, in some of these videos, I don't want just to get swept under the rug. You've been killing it. But you know, your thoughts, you know, about Black Bottom.
Well, the thing is, it's basically the structure of how the United States was formed, and our family formation. And what you see, even though, you know, there's overarching patriarchy or white patriarchy, white racist patriarchy in the 20s. I mean, everybody knows that. But the thing is, the matriarchy that was actually formed from the very beginning in slavery, you can actually see it. And who's in control? And actually see the band members who are the black men trying to placate both sides. You know, kiss up to the ass of the white record producer, and then try to placate Rainey, whose band it actually is, and who's demanding, and get in between the struggle between not only that, but also in the struggle between the black matriarchy and what she feels has been done to her, and the white patriarchy, and then how the guys who basically are, I wouldn't say victims, are actually caught in the crosshairs of those two things, even down to the last second. You know, you can see it. They're not actors, they're reactors. Of this whole thing.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. I want to thank all three of you. It's much appreciated. I didn't want to have this conversation by myself because I thought there was so much there that needed to be dealt with. So I really do appreciate all three of y'all coming out. So I'm gonna take you down. But I'll talk to y'all soon. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So make sure that you support the Green Gorilla channel. Make sure you support Artisan MC, especially in his quest to get his own comic book store. So we need to support that brother with that venture, and definitely support BGS Ibmore. Check out his channel. Support all three if you would. The two things I wanted to close on, you know, as far as Rainey is concerned, there's two things that really stood out for me after watching it. One was, you know, in terms of August Wilson's writing, there's really a serious tension with black men and happiness, right? One of the things that I notice, especially if we just earmarked, you know, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and Fences, one of the tensions you see is the distance between black men and being able to achieve a sustainable reality where they are either content or happy. If you look at Levy's life, his happiness is tied up in what he's able to achieve but it's in the hands of white folk who are exploiting him for his gift and have no intentions whatsoever on following through on the arrangements made. And he's hoping to be able to do it, but is so far from being able to achieve these things that it falls short. And with Fences, where, even if you were just going to put it in the vernacular of Denzel Washington, if you hadn't read the play and you just saw the film, what you notice about Troy, Denzel's character, the father figure in the film who's taking care of his wife, his son, and his brother, he has this affair. The woman that he has this affair with dies, and he ends up, they end up taking in this child that was produced out of that. But the thing with that is he loves his wife and whatnot, but he actually did fall in love with this other woman. And the way the play ends is with his wife raising with him this daughter that is a product of this affair. And she says, I'll do that, but you and I are done, effectively speaking. So they live together, they raise this child, but for the rest of their days, he's completely done. He's isolated, he's closed out, much like the gentleman in the recent Iyanla Vanzant episode, Fix My Life. His wife has literally closed him out of all forms of affection permanently, without even saying so. And so what I see in that is this kind of thing that August Wilson keeps coming back to in regard to black men and this barrier between them and actually being able to live a life of contentment or happiness, because the things they associate it with remain at arm's length from them. So that's the first thing. The other thing I wanted to shout out is that, as Chadwick Boseman's last, major performance that I'm aware of, if you haven't seen the film, definitely support it. Support Boseman. He did an outstanding job, especially, and it's highlighted that much more when you find out, what he was carrying in order to do that. I mean, we all know now that he was suffering from cancer. You can even see him much slimmer than he was in Black Panther in this film, but without that awareness of what he was going through, you wouldn't think anything of it. But the deterioration was already setting in. So when you start Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and you see him for the first time, his thinness comes across very differently now that we know, now that he's passed. It reads very differently. If he was still alive, we would just say, oh, he lost weight for the role or whatever. But when you see it now, you realize what he was going through to play that. And when he plays that, most particularly during the most intense scenes in the film, especially when he's arguing with Cutler over God, it takes on a whole different bent, because he's dying of cancer. And you have to ask how much of the intensity of that performance was really about Boseman's own issues, or not issues, I don't mean to dismiss them, but frustrations. I mean, how do you perform an intense scene about whether or not God exists based on all the pain you've seen in life when you yourself are dying of cancer? But what degree of any of that intensity was justifiably real for Boseman? Now, obviously, we'll never know. But like I said, when you see it, knowing what you know about Boseman, it takes a whole different turn for you. And you're going to be able to appreciate it, or at least come to grips with it in a way you wouldn't have if you didn't know what you knew. So, it makes you take your hat off that much more to Boseman and his performance. It's that much more powerful. So I recommend the film. I do recommend it. It just raises some serious questions about, black male life and what we're dealing with. And yeah, Mogul Mays, you're absolutely right. You got to see him in Defy Bloods, the Spike Lee film, which I think is technically like his second to last performance. He does a brilliant job in that as well. But it's sad, because Boseman was really just spreading his wings. And we've seen him do a number of things, from James Brown to Jackie Robinson, number of other pieces. He's done some excellent work, but you get the impression that this was just starting for him. I mean, especially in his relationship with Denzel. Look at how old Denzel is. And I don't mean that in any negative way at all. I'm just saying, look at his age and think about how many years you've been watching Denzel, and then look at Chadwick and think about, based on the level of his performance now, how many more years, we'll miss of his own development and progression, right? Denzel got to progress. He got to advance. He got to develop. We got to see him in different contexts, play different roles, different dimensions of who he is playing out through the peepholes of the characters he's chosen. and we'll never get that with Chadwick. And there was so much there. And I'm not going to limit it to potential. He expressed it. He realized his potential, but we didn't get to see where it would evolve into. And so when you see Denzel and the interviews he's doing, especially when he's shouting out Chadwick, I feel a little bit of a sadness there because I see how he's achieved what he's achieved, and I'll never get to know what Chadwick might have been able to achieve had he been able to live that long. So that said, excellent piece. Definitely something there to look at. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. Now, to my subscribers, we're not going to have an office hours tonight because I actually do have to finish grading. And if I can finish grading, I'll be done, hopefully before Friday, and we can get back on track next week. So that said, you know, to those of you that do celebrate the holidays, happy holidays to you. And y'all know how I like to close out. So get this stuff off. And we can go ahead and do it. I'm here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, brainless henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, warriors, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace to you, brothers.